And welcome to another episode of Their Side. This is a interview series of skateboarders by skateboarders, listening to their stories, understanding what skateboarding meant to them and still means to them. My name is Dean Samet. I've done some skateboarding over the years, and now I would like to introduce our fantastic guest today, Andy Murphy. Andy, thanks for coming along, mate. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
I'm
awesome. And we'll get started with a couple of the basics. And first of all, how old are you at the moment?
43.
43. So how long have you been skating?
Oh, I didn't know this was going to be a maths question.
We catch people out with the maths one every
Probably
year.
about 32 years or
So
something.
long enough that you've had a few falls.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And is there any connection between those falls and you being known as someone that's always got plaster on?
Yeah, I have broken my wrists a number of times.
Yeah. Did you ever do two at once?
No, Haswell did that.
Yeah.
Right around the time his baby was born as well. They had a new baby and...
Great way to hold a baby, just like yeah. We will get sort of started back to where it all began for you, which you grew up in a little town way back out in the west of Gippsland there, in Druin.
It's not that far away.
It's not now,
West
but
Gippsland.
back then, that was a fair way away, wasn't it, back in
It
the
wasn't
day?
horse and cart days.
Didn't you go to a school out in the paddocks?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. How was that growing up in that sort of environment?
Oh, it was cool. Like, we were the only people at the school that didn't have cows, basically. We were the only people who lived in the town. Our house was right next to a primary school, but for some reason Dad sent us to the farm school instead.
Was he a teacher there, or was he?
No, he was a teacher at the high school.
Right. So you didn't go to the same school at that point. And you, back in those days, obviously this is well before skateboarding was something that was going on. You're only young. What sort of things kept you entertained?
I don't know. I was pretty young. I got a bad memory. Cricket.
Cricket, yeah. The usual
Skateboard. We
sort
had
of stuff.
skateboard. Like my older stepbrothers had skateboards that we sort of sit on and roll up and down the driveway.
Yep, the old banana boards.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And back in the school days, because Andy is also not just a skateboarder, but an artist as well, and probably
Yeah, I'm
quite-
a lot better at drawing than I am at skating.
self-analysed. The back even at primary school, you were a bit of an artist way back then, weren't you?
Are you getting at the
You won some highlighters, didn't you?
the drawing contest I won in grade 2? Or
Yeah.
It was either grade 2 or grade 1.
And that was for the whole school. You
Yeah.
had the best art.
It was a pretty small school. There was only 60 kids there.
That's not bad. Best out of 60.
And I won some highlighter pens, and they were modern technology at the time. I'd never seen them before. I was pretty stoked.
That's pretty cool. Do you remember what it was you drew back then?
Yeah, Asterix from
Oh yeah,
Asterix and
the
Obelix
Obelix,
cartoons.
Cool. And
Um,
what was your inspiration to start drawing something like that when you were only 6?
I loved it. That was my favourite type of books. I might have been like 7 or 8 because I could read.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I could read when I was 6, but
And then from primary school, you went to the same school that your dad was teacher at. Is
Yep.
that right? Yep. Were you ever in the same classes?
yeah, in year 9, he was we had a class called leisure activities. So he was my leisure activities teacher.
That sounds a bit cruisy.
Yeah, well, we just sort of made kites and candles and stuff.
Was it weird having him?
I was the only kid in my class that called him Mr. Murphy. Everyone else called him Dad.
That is hilarious. It's a
Yeah.
role swap.
I was a total fuck up then in year 9. I wasn't doing very much work. I was pretty heavily into skating and stuff by then. So I think I got the best mark for that class that year. That
for
was my highest
leisure-
mark. It was
for
all
leisure
like
activities.
C's and D's, and then leisure activities. I think I got a B+.
Very good at leisure.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah. And so during that time, obviously by around about that high school era was when skateboarding became a bit more of a thing for you. So do you remember when you got your first skateboard? Your first
I think it was
wide
probably-
board?
Yeah, what we used to call it wide boards. It was probably 87, I guess. That was when I was in year 7.
Yep. So there's a first year high school sort of thing.
Pretty sure.
Were there many other skaters at school?
Yeah, there was a handful of us. It was kind of, I don't know, maybe 10.
Oh, so a fair few. You weren't an outcast
In high
as such.
school, not really. Like most of the people were into cricket and footy.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in Druin, like just about everyone in the town played softball on Saturdays.
Yeah, right. Yep.
So softball was a big deal in Druin.
You played softball as well?
Yep.
You were not a bowler, a pitcher. Were you a pitcher?
I was.
Yeah, because they've got a funny technique. You've got to do that sort of wind-up arm and then underarm throw. Is that right?
Yep. No, I don't know. I think it was the 80s. Softball was real popular. It was in Druin. We played all the state championships and stuff. I think we won one.
Yeah.
Primary boys. So I must have been playing that in primary school, actually, yeah.
And how did it sort of, where was the skateboarding fitting into something like that, where you were in a structured team sport, so to speak, with softball, but then you've got skateboarding that you want
Loads
to do?
of the dudes I skated with were into softball as go
Yeah, right. So you
pretty
go
much
to training
everyone
and then
played
go
it.
skating after training or something.
Yeah, we lived pretty close to the softball field, and Dad helped me and Mavey, my brother, build a jump ramp. So dudes would come and skate the jump ramp. We'd just like do. We lived on a pretty steep hill, so we'd like roll down the hill onto the jump ramp, and we'd have it pointed diagonally off the footpath onto the grass, so we could land on the grass. And we'd just early grab from like 15 metres back up the hill, and just like cruise down the hill.
And then method onto the grass.
Yeah, basically.
How did you, I never did the grass thing, because
I don't know.
you can't roll away, so you're going to crash every time.
Yeah, but it's an airbag landing.
Says the man who's had all these broken arms. Yeah.
Yeah, if we were good, we would have landed back on the footpath. Ryan Denneray could do it. He was awesome at it.
So that mini ramp the jump ramp, I should say, that your dad built for you, there was a bit of another story about that. In that, not only did your dad build a ramp for you, but he also gave you some paint to paint it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he let us. I can't remember if we saved up money because we used to do paper round. I can't remember if he let us buy it or if he bought it for us. But so I wanted to graffiti the jump ramp because I'd seen Beat Street by then, and I thought graffiti was real cool. And so I bought black, red, white, and silver spray paint, and I spray painted a silver shark on the side and wrote "rad." And then not long after that, like within a couple of weeks after that, someone graffitied our whole high school with those same 4 colours of paint. And so everyone thought
Was
I'd
it
done
just
it.
the colours, or did they write "rad" or something?
No. They'd written DOA, which was like this fake graffiti gang I'd made up. Dead on Arrival.
So you had made it
This is
up.
before I'd heard of the thrash metal band DOA.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's a fair reason to be suspicious.
and I had
that you
it.
were
I
linked.
had it written in my school diary, and someone found my school diary, and it's
Yeah.
like, and so I got the blame for it. I think my dad still thinks I did it. I'm pretty sure.
Did he give you detention?
No, he wasn't in charge of disciplining me at school. I can't remember. I definitely would have gotten some kind of detention. I used to get that all the time. But I found out years later, I was probably in my 20s, because I never knew who did it. Like, I was just like, it wasn't me, I swear. And Libby Hobday, who was a good friend of mine back then, told me years later that she did it.
She actually did it.
Yeah.
Man. She could get away with those looks doing anything, couldn't she?
Well, that's right, yeah.
That reminds me of a story when I was at school and one of the guys wrote Nardis on his desk. It was during an exam, and he was quite smart, finished the exam before anyone else, wrote Nardis all over the desk. And then
You won't be
later
that
on,
smart if you wrote it on the desk you were sitting at.
no, this is where it comes in. Teacher comes over and sees Nardis written all over the desk, like literally, in a row like that over the entire desk. Teacher comes over and goes, "What's this?" He goes, "Oh, it was here when I sat down." And he goes, "What does it mean?" He goes, "Well, read it backwards. It says Satan. It must have been the Headbangers." So the Headbangers copped the blame for it, and they got in trouble for it. So, yeah, it's a very similar thing where you're the one that copped the blame. So
I
around
didn't
that
worship
time,
Satan, though.
no, neither did the Headbangers really.
Well,
So around that time in that high school era, you had a bunch of your friends in Druin were also doing paper rounds and finding wood around?
Yeah. I can't really remember the timeline that well, but I think this is probably the same year, maybe 89. There was a bunch of the skaters did paper rounds. Gavin Maisie and Tim Garden and a few other dudes. And we'd get up real early, like way before the newsagent opened, and go to building sites. I'm sure every skateboarder's done this.
Yeah.
Take plywood and timber and stuff and stash it. We used to hide it by the train line, and then go pick it up after school and take it around to our friend's house. And we'd come up with stories about where it came from.
Yeah,
like,
very common MO, this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever get your mum to drive it back for you on the roof of the car?
Nah.
That was
Mum didn't live in Druin there. Like, my parents split up when I was really young, and Dad's would never have fallen for that.
I think my mum knew, but she looked after us on it, so.
Yeah, well, actually, we built a couple of quarter pipes and some kind of fun box type thing in the car park of the local police station. They let us have it there.
With stolen wood?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
That's pretty cool.
And one of the big quarter pipe, one of the dudes made for a metalwork project, like the frame of it, and we just put timber surface on it. But that was that was our skate spot, the police car park for a while.
Cool.
And yeah, one of my mates used to go out with the sergeant's daughter, so it was just a cool place to hang out.
Yeah. So there was plenty of spots in Druin to hang out and skate and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't just...
Yeah.
So there was some sort of street sort of things in the area?
Yeah, it's a decent sized town. Like,
yeah.
I wouldn't say there was any good street spots from memory. There was
not like the shopping centre or something?
Nah, it was like a 2-stair or a 3-stair at the post office. That's all I can remember, really. We built it was just mini ramps pretty much.
Yeah.
Bunch of different friends.
There wasn't a skate park there at Druin, is there?
No.
Warragul.
Oh, there is now.
Warragul's the closest one?
No, there's one in Druin, and there's one in Warragul now. But sort of towards the end of my high school, they built a steel, like a 6-foot-high mini ramp in Warragul, which is the next town over. It's a bigger town. And I was living with my mum by then. So she lived in Warragul, and yeah, I'd sort of catch the train to and from school. But I remember I got suspended from school for 3 days. So I just spent 3 days skating the ramp. I thought it was awesome. I got suspended for mooning a bus.
Another school bus.
Well, my friends were on the bus with their ass hanging out the window. And so I turned around and did it back to them. We were, like, a bunch of us skating home from school, and our year 11 year level coordinator was driving behind the bus.
And only saw your ass, not theirs.
Yeah, and I think there was another dude as well. We were all geared up to go on the Great Victorian Bike Ride as well, but he banned us from going on that. There was another guy, me and this other guy, Glenn. So he took us into his office the next day, and he's like sort of telling us off, and he goes, "Now, I wasn't offended by it. I've seen plenty of young boys' bums in my time." And you're just like, "Yeah, what?"
That is bad.
Yeah.
That's not this sort of honesty that you need from a teacher.
I won't say his name.
The other thing about those ramps and stuff that you used the stolen wood to make, was there not an occasion where you stayed up pretty late one night finishing off the ramp? What happened the next morning?
Yeah, well, my friend Tim Garden, who was a really good skateboarder as well, I can't remember the order of events, but I'm pretty sure him and his brother had built this ramp in their backyard, like a big, I think it was like 7 foot high, really crap, but like, I think it had like nearly a foot of vert. I'm pretty sure they had that first and then tore it down. And then Tim said, we're going to build another one. So we started getting all decent timber for this one, and we wanted it to be good. And his family went on this big family trip away to to, I think it was like Northern Territory or something like that. And Tim said before he went, because I can't remember, I think he'd started planning out where he was going to go. But he said, you guys build the ramp while we're on holiday, and he showed me where they hid the spare key and all that
The whole family's gone away.
They were gone for a couple of weeks.
And
his dad was a teacher at the school as well, so I think must have been school holidays because we were.
had he sorted it with them that there's going to be a ramp when they get home from holiday? There's going to be a ramp in the backyard.
I thought he had.
Oh, shit.
And I mean, I'm sure he talked to them about it, but when they got back, they had this 5-foot mini ramp. Or it wasn't finished, but it was close to finished.
Yeah.
5 foot, the frame of a 5-foot mini ramp in their backyard when they got home from their family trip, and yeah, we got in a fair bit of trouble with that one.
So just roll around to some neighbour's house and build a ramp. That's a great way to get a skate park going.
Then we finished it, probably within that week, and late at night. So I was like super, super amped to skate. Went around there at 7 o'clock in the morning or something ridiculous, can't really remember, but within 20 minutes or so, I'd come off real bad. I dislocated my elbow and broke my wrist just there, that scar there.
Yeah, right, yep.
So my arm was like this big zigzag thing.
Oh, fuck.
And his parents weren't home. There was this metalhead dude that lived next door, best guy ever. He sort of was the one who got me into art, really. Real big dude, he was a year older than us. So we went to his house, and his parents called my dad, and I think they called the hospital maybe, I don't know. But Dad came around in his combi and took me to the hospital. I couldn't even walk, I was in that much shock. I was
right, yeah. Do you remember the trick you did that caused that?
Trick?
We're still in the kick turn phase.
Probably attempted axle stall, so I got no idea. I do know, I whipped out and just sort of landed on top of my arm like that.
Nasty.
And the dude next door, Justin, he said he heard me scream from like blocks away. You know? Someone else was on their way over and heard me scream as well.
Yeah.
And I was in hospital for a week for that because it was such a bad break, and they had to call a specialist from Melbourne and stuff. That was horrible.
And this is a bit of a common theme, some of these breaks. We'll hear a few more of these through the discussion. But that didn't put you off skateboarding, did it?
No.
How long were you off the board for because of that?
Oh, that was real bad. I'd probably a couple months before I got the plaster off. Dad cut the plaster off with an angle grinder. Because
it's a bit of faith in how deep
I don't know if
he's going.
it might have been another one. We'd seen, or he'd seen someone else get their plaster cut off, but they used it's like a wire brush on a drill sort of thing to cut the plaster. But Dad thought it was an angle grinder, so he just cut it with an angle grinder.
And when you go, that's when he stops.
He didn't get me, but yeah. I had like most people, blue lines from scratching with a pen, blue lines all over my arm. Yeah,
your parents didn't get put off letting you skate after that sort of that first break?
Nah, Dad was never that stoked on skating, I don't think. But
not to the point that he was going to say, you're not doing that anymore.
They never really did that with us.
Yeah.
I would have ignored them anyway. It would have just made me want to skate more, probably.
Yeah. And back in those days as well, that was in that era too. You mentioned Libby Hobday earlier on. You were actually one of the founding members of what was known as the Drouin Secondary School Skateboard Club, and she was the president. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. How did that all occur? Was she skateboarding, or was she just into skateboarding, or skateboarders?
She skated. She had a pretty decent mini ramp in her backyard, actually.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, she was never that great at it, but
she did it. Yeah.
Me and her were like super tight. We were really close friends. She was a year older than me at school, and yeah, I don't know. She knew loads of graffiti dudes as well. She's just sort of into that kind of scene. Same stuff with me and my other friends are into, and probably just a bit better at getting what she wanted. So she was the president.
And during that, what do you call it, the club, you guys did a whole bunch of stuff and organised to get some ramps built?
I mean, it was just dumb high school shit. Like,
Yeah.
probably had skate days. I can't really remember that well, but I do remember that we bought a mini ramp for the school. So we had this little, I think it was about 3 foot high mini ramp. A friend of mine in Warragul, this dude Aaron, he wanted to sell his mini ramp, and I think we'd had a few fundraisers for something or other at the skate club at school. So I was like, we should just buy it off him. And then they were asking me, I had to do a communication project for Year 11 English.
Yep.
And I somehow talked them into letting me do that as my communication project, buying a mini ramp.
And so that not only were they okay with you doing that as your communication project, they were actually happy to have a mini ramp at their school.
Yeah, I don't remember it getting used that often. I think they put a lock and key, like a chain, over the flat, so we couldn't really skate it unless it was like an officially sanctioned skate time.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure they would have made us wear stack hats, as was the
The old
style
stack
of the
hats in
times.
And back in those days as well, you had one of Victoria's top skateboarders at the time, but he probably was a bit underrated in that regard, Ryan Deneraz in that area.
Deneray.
Deneray.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's just spelled weird.
Yeah, right. I've got the
He
Aussie
lived like
slang on it.
just probably 10 or 15 houses down the hill from us.
Yep. Because he
And-
ripped, man. He was good.
Oh, he was still to this day one of the best skateboarders I've ever seen. Just naturally gifted.
Yeah.
He's good
yeah.
at everything, little bastard. Yeah, I even got an electric guitar, and he was instantly better at that than me. It's just like, I just made me want to give up everything.
Actually had Andy Young recently messaged me about Ryan. He goes, oh, you should get Ryan on. And then like within 10 minutes he gets back to me, he goes, I asked Ryan, he doesn't want to come on because he lives near him or something. He's like,
he wouldn't
yeah,
have a bar of it.
yeah. But yeah, he was so good though. He was amazing as a skateboarder. Was he hooked up? Did Gons actually hook him up at one point? Was that?
Oh, I don't know.
He was hooked up with like some of the Vision stuff, I think, at one point, wasn't he?
Oh, I can't remember. He got sponsored by Motion, I think.
Yep.
Oh, nice. He was in the Snake Pit video.
Yeah, yeah.
Tongue biters.
That's when I think it was something that connected with through Gons
Yeah,
that
probably.
organised Vision to get him on
I
board
don't
or
know,
something. So
He was sort of skating with Gregsy and Ben Harris and all those dudes
Yep.
by then. They were like the best skateboarders in Melbourne at the time.
yeah. And so speaking of Melbourne, when did you sort of start travelling to Melbourne, and did you sort of
Well, when
come
we were
to
in high
Melbourne
school,
specific for
he was-
skating sort of stuff?
He
or-
was like probably in year 7 or 8, and he's 3 years younger than me. He could skate before he even owned a board. Like he could do kickflips when I barely even knew what a kickflip was, and he didn't even own a board. He
Yeah,
used
right.
to get on our boards. But yeah, I discovered the Greensboro mini ramps when I was visiting my grandma one time.
Yep.
So we took him there, and then sort of took him to a few, like we just went together to a few contests, and he'd pretty much just win them. And yeah, from there he got to know everyone much quicker than I did.
Was that the reason you sort of came to Melbourne, was to come to comps, or was it just to...
Oh, not me. I just went to hang out and
Yeah, right. So you would just come to
be around
Melbourne to hang
skating.
out?
I didn't
and-
go to any contests.
Yeah.
I think I went in one at Jacana mini ramp.
Oh, really? That wasn't the greatest of mini ramps.
No, it was terrible. Maybe, I think, placed in the under 16s though.
Right.
I think Will Stoyles beat him.
Will's competition record was pretty strong back then.
I saw Ralph Roturo won the high ollie contest that day.
They had a high ollie contest at Jacana on the flat bottom or something.
Yeah, this is before I knew him. He ollied 7 or 8 boards or something. The first time I actually met Ralph, he's going to hate me for saying this. It was sort of the crisscross era. So he had undercut hair, all plaited.
Yeah, yeah.
With like plaited dreadlocks.
Those little plate. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He can't hate you for that. He wore it. He has to live it. That's it. Yeah. And he was only a kid back then too. He was
a big kid though.
He was a big kid.
Probably-
He's
I
smaller
think-
now.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he had a beard.
Yeah, he had a beard at 16.
Yeah.
And
Wait,
so back then
it
you
wasn't
met.
a full beard, it was a goatee.
Yeah.
Him and Mike Carney
it
loved
was.
the goatee.
Yeah.
You,
I think
you
I had
used to rock a goatee then
I had
too.
the goatee then as well. And I look back on it, I'm like, that's the worst look ever. I had a goatee and a skinhead. It was just fucked. But
I think I tried to grow one once, it didn't work.
I can't help it. Mine comes out in a day. But at that time, coming into Melbourne and stuff, you met a bunch of the crew. You had, and that's, I suppose, what skating's about, isn't it? You get to meet people and you get to hang out and become friends with people.
I met loads of people through Ryan and Libby.
Yep.
Just because Libby was a fairly attractive young lady.
Very
She was
attractive.
pretty good at making friends.
Yeah.
So I sort of got to know Boxy, Troy Amani, and he was ripping back then. He was one of the best Paran locals.
Yeah.
Can't remember. Renton, for some reason, I'm pretty sure I knew him when I was real young. Those dudes were the two friendliest, probably.
Mhm.
Steele Saunders, he used to come and hang out and draw a bit.
Yep.
Some of the other Frankston dudes. Remember Ed Kroll visiting?
Yeah, right.
Pretty sure Dave Snow.
So a lot of the
They
guys
come to
from here-
Druin, I don't know why.
Yeah, I think I visited there
Ryan
once, but I
Denner
wouldn't
had
have
pretty
hang
hot
out there.
sisters.
Yeah,
Maybe that was
little
why, I don't know.
blonde Aryan looking kid. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember when I first met you, but I really can't think of when it was that I first met you. But it was in that time, it was in that era, through those guys that you've mentioned there. There was a connection that we would have hung out and,
Yeah, like
and started
92,
skating and stuff.
93.
Yeah,
probably.
something around that.
We would have had ridiculously oversized jeans on.
Absolutely, which is not hard for me. They're always still too big for me these days as well. Speaking of Libby and the friends that she made, she actually was going out with Jason Ellis for a while.
Yep.
And so you used to hang out with those guys as well.
Yes, that wasn't that fun.
How did Ellis treat you?
Good, thanks. No, I remember a few times like we'd be drunk at Libby's apartment and he'd just throw me around the house and tell me we were wrestling. I was like, no, we're not. He's like, yes, we are, Andy. And just like,
Because he's a strong dude, and back then he was fitter and stuff than he even is now. Even though now he does some MMA
he
stuff
wasn't.
and everything. Oh,
no, he's just an arsehole.
he was. I saw him destroy a board one day at Chelsea. He, bailed a trick or something and just got off the ramp and just started smashing his board on the edge of the ramp and basically like a wood chopper, just turned it into.
He's a
Smithereens.
funny dude, man. Like, he was apart from that, he was really good fun to hang out with. And
Yeah. Well, that's why he's doing what
insane
he does now.
skateboarder as well.
Yeah.
Back then, like,
I loved his style. So powerful.
Yeah.
And solid. So you got thrown around a fair bit and bashed by him, but for him that was just fun.
yeah, I was mega young. I was like 17 or 18 or something.
But that didn't do any damage to you. But
No.
play wrestling with Ralph did.
Oh, that's a different Ralph.
Oh, it's a different Ralph.
Yeah, that was a Ralph from my high school. Yeah, the first time I broke my arm was this arm was at Traralgon. They had this like weird dish bowl thing, and yeah, I just came off, and then that healed up. I think that was the plaster Dad cut off with the angle grinder, and then like a month or two later, I was wrestling with this dude Ralph, and I lied down on the ground like this, and he stood up and went to kick me in the stomach, but he hit me like that, and my wrist. We both heard it go,
Oh.
and we both started crying.
He was so upset that he did it to you.
Oh, it was really obviously re-broken.
Yeah.
It didn't look broken, but we both heard it crack and
Yeah.
both freaked out.
Was he a skateboarder or just a
Yeah,
friend?
yeah. Back then he was, not anymore.
And back in those days with skateboarding, what sort of influence did you have? Was there people or videos or what sort of things motivated you with skateboarding?
Back then, there was this video, I never know what it's called. We used to call it bootleg, but I've heard other people call it the H Street video. We
Yeah,
had
actually.
a real weird copy of it.
Which is why you probably called it bootleg, because it was bootlegged.
No, I'm pretty sure Libby got it off Gary Valentine. Because I think, did he ride for H Street back then? I can't remember.
May have done. Yeah.
But it had a different soundtrack to all the other time versions of it that I've seen.
Oh, right. So if you get one now, it will have a different soundtrack.
Well,
like
the
original.
new or the different version had like Operation Ivy and a few other bands, but the one we had like loads of Bad Religion, and it's that one that has AC/DC at the start. And what's his fucking name?
Has it got the Matt
Skating
Hensley,
full pipe.
the Matt Hensley Street run through the park, and he?
I can't remember, but Chad Vogt.
I think that was
however
Hocus
you
Pocus
pronounce it.
actually. So you might be right. It could be the bootleg one.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, that's when I sort of discovered punk music and that kind of stuff. That and the Questionable video.
Yeah.
Which
So
came
the
a few-
skateboarding
that
itself
came a
was
few years
amazing,
later.
but then the fact that it was connected to such cool music, you were like, that got
I
you
was
in.
more into
everything.
the music than
Yeah.
yeah. And I used to hang out with Dean Cadby quite a bit back then, and he's super into music, and I ended up living with him, and he's like a music nerd, would just buy all the CDs at the time, so I didn't buy any.
He was right into his music.
He still
He'd
is,
know
yeah.
every
He's super into it.
every
He's
band
really
coming
into
up and
poster
everything.
collecting as well.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't display many of them.
Yeah.
They're
But he was
mostly
an
under his
amazing
bed.
skateboarder too. He was so good. He was
Oh,
one of
he's
those
unreal.
naturals as well. He
Yeah,
was so good.
good.
And so when you did move in, you mentioned you moved in with him, but you moved from Druin back down to Melbourne, and you moved in at where was the first place you moved?
When I left high school, I moved to Rosanna. I lived with my grandma, and I was studying finished art at TAFE, which is an industry that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. That might have been when I met you, and you were going out with Tanya at the time.
Yeah, probably around that.
Could have been around
era, maybe a bit after that.
I think. You were
Oh
living
wait,
in-
no, I lived in Northcote in this house. Yeah, I lived in this house in Northcote probably around then as well. But the two other people in the house just bailed, and I was like 17 or 18. I had no idea how leases or any of that shit worked. So I just stopped paying rent, didn't pay any bills, had no furniture. I was living on like boiled rice and soy sauce, and I was too embarrassed to ask my mum for help.
And then
I was just going skating every day. I think.
then someone came and kicked you out one day.
Oh, I can't remember. Eventually, I was just like, I'm pretty sure I shouldn't be here. I think that's when I moved in with Mike Carney.
Yeah, over in Paran.
Yeah.
And at that time too, did you actually have a job or anything, or you just skating?
I did a spell on the Dole.
Yeah.
I think that was when Mike worked at what was Motion back then.
Yep.
And then it became
M2O.
M2O. So we'd be able to sort of get boards and giant pants off him.
Yeah. They had that pile of giant pants out the back all the time, and people
Those
out there
pants,
doing.
like those jeans, sold well for that
They
dude.
did,
Though.
yeah.
He must have made a fortune out of
Yeah.
those
He
ridiculous
was always out the back
trousers.
sewing them and stuff, and taking
Pete
them up
Burgess.
for us. Yeah, Pete Burgess. Yeah, funny dude.
Biggest shit talker in Melbourne.
Yeah. There was, and that was also when you were skating with Ralph and Dave Snow and all those guys
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
So it was definitely that time when I
And going to
had that
Chase's
as well.
nightclub.
Yep.
One time we were at Chase's, I remember, and they had the balcony upstairs. You could look down onto the dance floor.
Yep.
And me and Dave, and I can't remember, a couple other people probably, just got a massive pile of straws and joined them all together. We were trying to like steal people's drinks off the balcony.
So back in those days of skating, what sort of things were like significant sort of times or events for you there? So you moved to Melbourne, you're skating everywhere. What sort of stuff were you? Street, vert, parks?
Well, I moved in with Mike Carney. We sort of got into snowboarding a little bit. I don't know. I mean, we just go skate the bowl and
Yeah, if you're living in Paran, it's around the
skate
corner.
St
of
Kilda
course.
Road and that kind of stuff. But I tried to get into vert because I've always thought vert was cool.
Yep.
Yeah, so I can't really remember. I think that was around the time I started trying to skate vert. Cadby was sort of into it as well, like, and he was obviously a lot better than me. I'd wear pads and he wouldn't, and he could do pretty rad tricks. Just, like back then, like backside tail slides and stuff. The old Paran vert ramp though, like
The
not
silver one. Yeah.
not that retarded new thing.
Yeah, that's too
I hate
big.
that thing. Don't get me started. I could go on a big rant about it for half an hour.
So he could do back tail, but what were you doing? What sort of tricks did you do?
Troy Armani was unreal on that ramp too.
Really?
Oh yeah, like
I don't think I ever saw him skate vert.
he'd skate it like a street skater though.
Yeah, right. Like it's a mini ramp or something. Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone used to skate it. It was
So-
like a giant mini ramp.
Did you go? It was a giant mini ramp. I remember.
Only had
using it
like that
as
much
well.
vert.
Yeah, and I remember watching you skate there and seeing you doing tricks but not dropping in. So you could do rock to fakies. Is that right?
No, I learned rock and rolls.
rock and rolls. Yeah.
And then, like I think I did one rock and roll, just like pumping up to the coping. I tried a bunch of times and then finally landed one. And then I think my vague memory of it is I ran up the platform, and Tony Hallam took his pads off and let me wear his knee pads, and then I just dropped in straight away and I took them off and kept skating.
I remember my brother was the same. He would do rock and rolls, did lip tricks, but wouldn't drop
It was a
in.
crap rock and roll, by the way, just like. It wasn't like fully decked or anything like that, but it just was enough to give me the confidence to drop in.
And with that Paran ramp as well, did you not use that as a fitness regime?
Oh, fuck off. That was much later. I was living in Greville Street by myself, and I had like a real corporate job on St Kilda Road.
Actually, at a skate spot, wasn't
Tiles, yeah. It was, back then, that was probably one of the most popular skate spots in Melbourne. I worked in that building up on the top floor. I had a corner window looking down onto the
What
skate
job was
spot.
it?
What's that?
What job?
I worked for a print broker that was a division of Spotless Services.
Yep.
And I'd sort of worked my way up there. I was one of the managers. I was doing pretty well then. And yeah, suit and tie, dickhead. I didn't even tell people I worked with that I skated,
Yeah.
because I don't know, it was different back then. Like, it wasn't. I was just embarrassed. There was a
Yeah.
bunch of other people I know were the same that kept it to themselves. Be a dirtbag during the weekend, and
Yeah. And corporate image on the weekdays. Yeah.
yeah, and
I was opposite. I'd always just be like, "Yep, I'm a skateboarder, and I'm wearing a suit, just doing my job." But my real
I don't
passion is
know.
over there doing skateboarding. So
I just felt like a dork, so I didn't want to.
I think because I'd done it and I was in the same business for the whole time, I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
have
yeah.
to. It grew up with me, kind of thing. Whereas for
Yeah.
you going into a different job and starting somewhere fresh.
Yeah, I had to pretend I was into footy and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
Go in the footy tipping contest, all that kind of shit.
Ah, you love it.
And
You're a
they'd
country
ask
boy,
me
you've
about it
gotta love
on my. Well, did you see the Crows? And it'd be like, yeah, Jezelenko.
You beauty. So
well,
the
yeah,
fitness thing that
I
linked
got
to that as
into
well.
the dude who was my direct superior. I was kind of like, he was sort of like my mentor, I guess. He was, he sort of struggled with his weight a little bit. He was the best dude, like nicest guy, and so he was always talking about eating right and fitness and all this shit. And so he sort of got me psyched on doing exercise in the mornings. So I started jogging around whatever that big park is at the back of St Kilda Road.
Yep.
Um,
Faulkner Park, I think. or
yeah,
something.
that's it, Faulkner Park. Boring as shit. Jogging sucks.
The scenery moves by so slowly.
And so I was like, I should just do something fun instead. And I lived not far from the ramp, so I started going to skate vert at like 6 a.m. before work on my own. Like half the time I'd get there and there'd be dew all over the ramp.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Isn't it hard when it's dewy in the morning and stuff?
Yeah, it wasn't always like that. So
Yeah.
I did get to skate a couple of times, but in the end, that was just too embarrassing.
How is the motivation to, first of all, be skating it that early in the morning and to be skating alone on a vert ramp? Like,
I always skate by myself anyway.
yeah.
It's less embarrassing then.
And then so doing it that early in the morning, is that just a weird thing? Like,
Oh, that was just,
yeah.
I was just an idiot.
I do.
But it's easier, like if you wake up and you got to do some exercise,
yeah.
should I jog or skate? It's pretty easy to choose.
Yeah.
Choose skating. I just remembered then, I also bought, like I had this little 1-bedroom apartment and I bought this massive weight set, like this bench press sort of deal with the, what are those things called?
Like a dumbbell and
No,
barbell
it was,
setup?
It was
or?
on a chain.
Oh, like
What are
the
they
proper
called?
gym setup. That
Yeah,
we would-
yeah.
Like with the resistance
So that
weights
took
and
up
stuff.
As much of my bedroom as my bed did. It was a tiny little spot. And you could see
You
it
can see
obviously
the
paid off.
difference, So,
I don't even think
those,
I used it. I just bought it.
those
let it sit
guns,
there.
massive. Because I do some early morning activities. I get out on my bike and stuff like that, and I ride past the Kilda skate park sometimes. and at 7 a.m, there are dudes skateboarding something. And I'm
Man,
like,
I've done
wow.
that. Like, I used to work for Lush, Lush Distribution, who does like Santa Cruz and Creature and all those kind of brands.
Yep.
Zoo York and that. And when St Kilda was first built, a whole bunch of us went there at about 6:30 or 7 in the morning. I remember I went and picked up Nick Kildare. It was like Mike Martin, Morgan Campbell, Sean Holland. I can't remember why. I think someone was going somewhere and...
Had those guys been asleep, or they were just going all night and you get them in the...
Oh, they're all pretty mellow.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were all there at 7 o'clock and we got there and there was other people there skating. We're just like, what are you doing, you weirdos?
It's like that. Skateboarding for me is, like I said, I do activity in the morning, but skateboarding is not one of them. It just doesn't, my body's not ready for skateboarding until after 10, maybe.
I don't know. I skate Brunswick semi-early these days.
Yep.
Dudes, Clint Kwan texts me and says to meet at 10 or 11 on Saturdays usually, Saturdays or Sundays.
If the right dudes ask, I'll probably be out there skating, so hit me up.
Would you come skate Brunswick?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny, like...
I've got a specific Brunswick
Ching
board.
texts me like a couple of times a week to skate, and he's 54 years old, and he's got more enthusiasm for it than a 14-year-old. It's unreal.
It is cool like that, isn't it?
If it wasn't
and it's motivating.
if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't skate.
Yeah, it's so motivating.
Guarantee that.
So those houses you lived in, you've talked about a couple that you've lived in, but there's a few that have been pretty big party houses, haven't there?
Yeah, most of them.
What are some of the classics out of those? So, did you live in that? That was Tim Hillier's place, I think, on Lygon Street, that had the mini ramp out the back.
Yeah, that was sick. I didn't live there.
That you didn't live in that one, no.
That mini ramp was unreal. Like we had,
and that New Year's Eve, that was mental.
Me and James had all, ordered. This is before you could email stuff. I mean, you probably could, but we sent off a fax and ordered all these fireworks from Adelaide, and they got hand delivered in a truck from Adelaide to... James worked at Factory X then, Dangerfield. So they got delivered there, and then so everyone at the party had fireworks.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
And we're shooting them off the ramp, so they were shooting up like that, and we're skating, and there's fireworks going like this. And
Yeah.
That was the year 2000, and everyone like...
Kirby was chasing people around with a Roman candle.
Yeah,
just like,
even in the house as well.
Yeah. That house was... Like, so other people that lived there was Dave Snow, Nikos, and I think Ben Hoban might have lived there.
Oh, yeah.
But they had this weird thing with... they all refused to buy toilet paper because there was this toilet paper feud going on. And so every time one of them had a shit, they'd get in the shower because there was never toilet paper there.
Man, the share houses are crazy like that, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I had a... look, I lived in one with Cadby in Hawthorne. We were all pretty young then. It was when I started hanging out with Kirby and James and Matt Morange and those kind of dudes.
Yep.
Because after we'd skate, a lot of the time we'd end up back at our house. Cadby had good music as well, which didn't hurt.
What about...
Camberwell House was mental.
So that was the one that had like Bomber.
James Foster.
James Foster, yeah.
Cadby lived in that one.
He broke his arm a couple of times, didn't he? He's part of your arm crew.
Yeah, probably.
I remember getting in
punching a wall.
It might have been. I remember getting in a fight at a gig at the corner. This dude...
How many people did you beat up?
Well, I don't know how many I got, but James helped out because this guy threw a bottle and it goes flying past me and Sarah and hit some girl over here. And I'm like, fuck, like out of nowhere. And so I'm like, what? So we ran over and got this dude. And I grabbed him, and then I saw James there and he's got his plaster on his arm. So I get this dude and I hold him, and James starts just hitting him with the plaster arm. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, security. And so we just all sort of vanished back into the surrounds, and the guy that we were beating up got taken out. And then later on when we left, there was all blood all over me, and Sarah's like, oh, you've been hurt. And I'm like, no, I haven't. It was all the other guy's blood. So,
shit.
Yeah, so James's cast came in handy that night.
Drunk James doesn't back down.
Yeah, he was a wild man. What about, there was, you lived with your brother Mavey. We haven't really talked of Mavey at the moment. That's I think the first intro of Mavey, your brother, who has got many, many stories of his own as well. which we'll touch on a few of. But you lived with him a couple of times as well. There was did he live with you in one of the houses that then someone from Mindsnare wrote a song about him because?
That was a bit later on when we lived in Fitzroy. We had a house near the Bowl, 490 Brunswick Street.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun house. We had a lot of travelling skateboarders stay with us. Maybe like going back, like when maybe he was 19, he had a really bad fall at a nightclub.
That was absolutely scary, that one.
Oh, that was fucked.
Yeah. Because
that was the worst day of my life.
Mavey used to push the limits on everything that he was doing and like messing around sort of stuff when we're out clubbing. And I wasn't drinking much at that time. I wasn't drinking at all. So when we'd be out, I'd see these guys going crazy and I'd always say to Mavey, you're almost in the red zone, man. You're in the amber at the moment. You're so close to the red zone. You've got to just chill. You know, you just got to take it. Just don't take that next step. And then I wasn't there that night, but I heard about it. And
so I was there that night. Like what happened was, so we were at Oxide, which was a nightclub
just down on near the old 7-Eleven of
not far from the Crown
Commercial
Bowl.
Road. Yeah.
And they had a mini ramp in there. Did you ever skate that?
Yeah.
It was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
It was 4 foot with vert.
Yeah.
But we still get pissed and have a crack
Yeah.
every now and then. But there was, a whole bunch of us there for whatever reason. And I'd gone back to our house in Camberwell where I lived with my girlfriend
I
at the time.
was there that night actually,
Michelle.
and then I went home early. Yeah.
And I got a phone call from James saying, I didn't even answer the phone. This is before everyone had mobiles as well. Michelle answered the phone. No, I answered the phone. And James was like, Mavey's in hospital. You better come here. And I was just like, not in the mood. And I was like, oh, he's probably broken his arm again. I'll see him in the morning, and hung up and went back to sleep. And the phone starts ringing again. I'm just like, I'm not getting it. So Michelle got up and got the phone. She's like, it sounds pretty serious. You better get up. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Pain in the ass. What's he done? And then James gets on the phone and he's like, your brother's unconscious. And I was like, oh, fuck. And so...
He was more than unconscious after all.
Yeah, it was really bad. So I was way too drunk to drive. So I woke up the other dude that we used to live with, Big Knob Rob, who was also way too drunk to drive, but offered to drive anyway.
Yeah.
So
where's it? The Alfred, just down the road?
No, we were in Camberwell, and he was in Paran at the Alfred. So we jumped in his Kingswood, and he drove us there. And I get to the emergency window, whatever, and I was like, I'm here to see Sam Murphy. James was not there, I don't think. I was off somewhere else. And they were like, there's no one by that name here. And I was like, what? I've been told my brother's here. He's had a really bad fall, blah, blah. And he'd been checked in as Mavey. James didn't know his real name was Sam. And because he was unconscious when he arrived.
He couldn't correct it, yeah.
So James checked him in. And then they told me that, like, the doctors sort of took me into a room and they said, now, what had happened was he'd fallen off this balcony at the nightclub.
So there was trying to slide down the banister?
Yeah, it was a steep staircase. And the weekend before when we were there, me and him both slid down the banister aisle.
Yeah, that's when I was telling him
they told
that's
us
the red
off.
zone.
They both told us off. Like the bouncers told me and him off.
Yeah.
And they said, don't do that. Someone fell off here a couple of months ago and hurt themselves. So he went to do it again and fell backwards and landed on the desk where there's this line of people waiting to pay to get inside. And
so all of a sudden this dude just lands in front of their...
He landed on the desk, as far as I know, and just destroyed his knee and got something like a blood clot in his brain, which required immediate surgery, basically. So when I got there, they're like, we needed authorization to do this surgery. If he lives through the night, he's possibly going to be a vegetable. I can't remember how they put it, but I was just like sober, like instantly sober, like this adrenaline rush went straight through my body. And
how fucking harsh is that to cop that? And
oh, so gnarly.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, do the fucking surgery, hurry up.
Yeah.
Why have you been waiting? As if I'd say no,
Yeah.
And then, the long story short, he he got the brain surgery. He was in bed for 3 or 4 days before he tried to do anything with his leg, and then that's when they realised he's.
Yeah, you didn't even know the
I
leg
think he
was...
broke that bone there actually.
Yeah.
In there, and they didn't know for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, they were so focused on the head thing.
So he was in hospital for a long time, and then he went and lived with my grandma as well and did all his rehab and walked with a really full-on limp for a long time, and then eventually moved into a house in Richmond that had this really cool mini ramp in the backyard, and all the rehab he'd done had done nothing to get rid of his limp. He started skating again, and now he's back to normal.
That's it.
Yeah.
Doctors, there's a breakthrough in medical technology. Get skateboarding. Yeah, that was a really gnarly incident, and it's one that defined quite a few things thereafter for him. But also, did it change your outlook on life and stuff as well?
I started being nicer to him.
What a great big brother you are.
I don't know, this may have happened anyway, but after that he just seemed to grab life by the balls, and he travelled the world. He's been all over the place.
Yeah.
But because of his travelling, he met loads of skateboarders from all over the world.
Yeah, that's the connection back to the house story
this
that we're
house
talking
in
about.
Brunswick Street. And so, yeah, we had some Scottish skateboarders stay with us, a few different ones, Kenny and Glenn Boland, who was a gun skateboarder, Kenny Atkins, and a filmer guy, Alex Craig, who's done a bunch of stuff for Vice TV. And he's made a few movies. He did that one called Harvey Spanos, I think it's called.
Harvey Spanos.
Wait, that might be the character's name. I can't remember what it's called. Really fucking weird movie. Rick McCrank's the main character.
It's not the one with... it's kind of like a Charlie in the Chocolate Factory kind of.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
So he's one of the dudes behind that. We had Steve Bailey stay with us, the Consolidated Pro.
Lee Ralph.
Lee Ralph.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
So how'd that go with the shower usage?
Oh, he wasn't as bad as everyone makes out. The worst thing he did, like, I had to come out and tell him off a few times for smoking bongs in the lounge room. Like, I wake up at 6:30 in the morning to start getting ready for work, and he's like huffing away on a bong.
Was he there staying with you for some art stuff he was doing here at the time, or was that when he was still skateboarding?
He was doing art. Actually, funny you mentioned that. I just remembered he did this painting, like sort of sculpturally type painting thing, 3D sort of thing, and then decided he wanted the whole thing to be gold. So he took it into our laundry and spray painted it gold, but he didn't put anything behind it, so there's just gold paint all over the washing machine, all over the walls, everywhere. Still got that somewhere kicking around.
That's the inspiration that an artist gets and have to do it right then.
He could have just taken it outside. No, it was unreal. Like, I loved having him. Like, 'cause when I was a kid, he was one of my childhood heroes.
Yeah. Did you try to force him to go to Fitzy Bowl or something like that?
I didn't force him. I just used to ask him every night after work. I'd be like, let's go skate Fitzy. And he'd just be like, nah, man. He used to love going to Bimbo Deluxe for the $5 pizza. And then he'd go over the road to Trampoline and get himself an ice cream. It was like a daily ritual. And then one time he did come to Fitzroy Bowl with me. It was the only time I could talk him into skating. And I was like, this is going to be sick. Going to see Lee Ralph skate. Can't wait. And we got there, and all he tried the entire time was heel flip flyouts out of the corner. I can't even remember if he landed it, but...
And it's not a trick that he'd be expected
like, what
to
are you
do.
doing?
Yeah.
Just,
like, where's the Smith grind?
Yeah, do something.
Speaking of learning tricks, did you ever learn backside airs on vert?
Yeah.
How'd you manage that? What was your technique?
The trick with me with learning any trick is I have to figure out every single possible way of bailing it.
First.
Yeah. So I usually will have to try something 10,000 times before I can roll away from it, because I'm such a crap skateboarder. But the day I was trying to learn it, Renton was there, and he got sick of watching me bail, because he's like, Andy, you're on it, just fucking roll away. And then he's like, all right, Andy, we're going to play a game, it's just like skate. Every time you bail, you get a letter, but it's called faggot.
This is not politically correct, but
No. So
this is in a
and he
day when it
said,
was.
if you get up to T, I'm going to give you a dead arm. And so we're playing away, and he's like, F, A, G. I'm just like, fuck, got to land it. And I was getting really close, but just not committing. And so I was 3 faggots before I landed one.
So you got 3 dead arms.
Yeah, he did not back either.
But you got it though.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
pretty, but
So there's better ways to learn tricks, is what you're telling me.
there's better ways to do tricks. I didn't even do them very good. I used to like ollie to them just because Cardiel did it like that, and I thought it looked cool.
Well, Cardiel, I was about to mention, you've talked about some of the skaters that did come and stay with you guys, but Cardiel was one of those that you've hung out with there occasionally as well, is that right?
Oh, that was like around the time of the Anti-Hero Tent City tour.
Yep.
So Steve
Was that
Bailey,
the actual tour that he got his injury on?
yeah,
Yeah.
Steve Bailey was on that tour with them. Like he didn't ride for Anti-Hero, but he was on the tour with them. This is where they'd gone up to the pothole, big full pipe thing
Yep.
in the mountains and stuff. And yeah, they were doing demo in Paran, I think, like whatever the story is, but he had this bad spinal injury, and the rest of after a few days or whatever, the rest of the Anti-Hero dudes had to go back to the States. But Bailey stayed behind. He stayed at our house for a couple of months and was kind of, for a little while, he was like Cardiel's link to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The only person he knew probably. Like his family came out pretty much immediately. His sister was out here for a while, and Mickey Reyes and a few other dudes. But just through that, we got to know John Cardiel, which is pretty wild. He's
Yeah.
the best dude. Nicest guy on earth.
Yep.
Just super positive. I remember being at the hospital with him one day. Danny Way rang him, and like he's like chatting away, and because I guess Danny Way had some pretty gnarly back
Yeah.
problems and shit.
Yep.
And we got off the phone. And he got off the phone. He's like, "Dude, Danny Way just called me." I was like, "Yeah, but you're John Cardiel. Like, what's the big deal?"
Yeah, you got to imagine those guys still have
Yeah.
heroes as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
Another time I went to the hospital with Mavey, and we used to go there and just have barbecues with him. And, he'd cook Mexican food for us. He was mental with chili, man. Like he'd walk around with super hot chilies in a brown bag and just munch on them like they were potato chips. He's super into it.
That's mad.
But yeah, we went there to visit him one day to have a cook up at the hospital, and he was asleep. This is before he'd been told he'd never walk again.
Yep.
And he was asleep when we arrived, and we kind of looked in the doorway, and one of his feet was like twitching. And so we stuck around and waited. And when he woke up, I told him, I was like, "Man, your foot was moving while you're asleep." And he's like, "What?"
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he got super stoked. And they told him he'd never walk again. And then after however long he was here, I can't really remember, a couple of months, 3 months or something. On his last day, he caught a cab to our house and walked down the hallway of our house.
That's amazing.
It was like, yeah, me and Mavey and Bailey are just like cheering.
Yeah. And because you see where he's at now compared to what that prognosis was then, you're like, wow, it's
Man,
fine.
it's just because he's such a positive dude. I've never
Yeah.
met anyone like him. It was crazy.
Yeah. What else we got there? You got other houses where you've lived with Calderi and Scotty G and
Yeah, we had a house with a pool in the backyard.
yeah. How much of a party house was that one? Next level?
A fair bit of a one.
Yeah.
My liver's still recovering.
And so you had because of the Scotty connection, you would have had lots of the Vans guys come through, I suppose.
Yeah, we had lots of Vans shoes come through as well.
Yep.
Had a pretty decent hook up there for a while. Yeah. Baby Jackson Pills stayed with us for
He
some
was
reason.
a little tacker at the time.
Pedro Day. Who else? I think Josh Rio stayed with us. Like all at the same time, though. All these little kids on a tour. Oh, I mean, they're not little kids now, but they were back then.
Yep. And work-wise, did you do, in industry-wise, you've worked at Lush, you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, that was just kind of mostly in the warehouse.
Yeah. What other sort of skate industry kind of roles have you
Well,
had?
back then, when I was living with Scotty and Nick, I'm just trying to remember the timeline. Like, my brother. Okay, just to summarise, this dude Dean Finch, super underrated skateboarder as well. He was working building skate parks with Concrete Skate Parks, Rob Lewis' company, and he just lived around the corner from us. But I think he went overseas and left his car with Mavey for some reason. And it might have just been a holiday, I can't remember. But he had this rad old orange Kingswood, and they were working on a park in Trafalgar, right behind my dad's office.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the Monday morning, Mavey just drove Finchy's car to the job site and just pretended to be Finchy as a joke and just worked with him for the whole day.
But it's not close. It's not like Trafalgar is near Druin, isn't it?
It's past Druin, yeah.
Past. And so he's just gone for a leisurely drive all 2 hours up the
Well,
highway.
he knew all the dudes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who was on the crew back then.
And
It
just
was
turned
probably
up for work, like as if he was the other guy.
Yeah, he was just pretending to be Finchy as a joke and worked for the whole day because he had nothing else to do. And it got
That's
to the
so
end of the
Mavey.
day, and I think Rob said to him, I suppose you want me to pay you now, do you? And he's like, you can if you want. And then just kept going and just started working, building skate parks.
That just made himself a job.
Basically, yeah, just tricked his way into it. And then kind of got to be friends with the park building dudes like Rob Lewis, Dave Toms, who else? Jeremy Butterworth, Jezza, Noah Phillips. I think David Dare was working for him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I ended up working there after Mavey left. I didn't pretend to be Mavey, but I did that for 6 months or so. Fuck, it's hard work. Those dudes deserve a big pat on the back.
Yeah. What parks did you have a hand in?
Nothing great. Clifton Hill. It was pretty funny. Like, Clifton Hill was like, Scotty G worked on that as well.
Yeah.
So it's me, Jezza, Dave Toms, I'm trying to remember. Noah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so anyway, a lot of dudes from interstate. So they'd basically be crashing on our floor. Northcote. I remember Noah always used to sleep in front of the oven in the kitchen for some reason.
In front of the oven, like to keep warm, or just?
No, just in the kitchen, like just in a sleeping bag on a mat. Yeah, but we built Clifton Hill, which is in the coolest spot, best spot ever for a skate park, and we're all kind of transition skaters, and there's not one bit of transition on the whole park. We're just like, ugh.
I think there might be one little ramp up to a.
That doesn't count.
No.
Did
Did you ever, like when you get the designs for the park they're telling you to build, do you ever like, oh, that really shouldn't be there, that should be a bit this way, or that transition should be a bit like that? Or?
We couldn't do anything with Clifton Hill. They were super
No.
strict on the design. Like,
Yeah. You
There
couldn't
was-
throw a transition in there, that would stand out.
oh, I think the original plan had a bowl at one end, but
Yeah,
it
right.
got changed. The council was super strict. I think because the way it works, like Convic had designed it, I think, and yeah, Concrete Skate Parks were building it, and I don't know. I don't really get into the politics of that kind of shit.
Yeah.
We built another one at Rosedale and Hayfield, sort of way out in Gippsland, that I worked on.
Are those ones any good?
No.
I
We
won't go
tweaked
for
them
it.
here and there. You couldn't do too much with
Yeah.
them, really.
Might end up on a
I think
skate
it's a bit
safari out
different
to
now.
one of them.
Well, like they got, yeah, I don't know who designed them back then, but skate parks get designed quite well now. I think
Yeah.
they let the local kids get involved too much, and
Yeah.
teenagers, I know they think they know what they want, but
Yep.
they're not very good at building designing skate parks.
Yeah.
It's
Because
pretty
they're only
hard to
thinking
do
about
a
their
good
own
one.
style and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I never got involved too much either.
Yep.
But I did try, like when they were doing Warrigal, this is before I even knew Rob, when they were doing Warrigal, I'd submitted a bunch of drawings to the council. And what they ended up building wasn't a million miles away from
From your.
one of my drawings. I'm sure it had nothing to do with it, but
Mm.
yeah, I think that's how we met Rob actually. He was building Warrigal, and because we're from there, I think we were visiting
Mm-hmm.
from my vague recollections.
And What about travel sort of stuff? You've done a bit of travel around Australia for skating. Did you do? Were you a DJ for the Bolorama Caballeros
It was
anniversary one?
It was this Caballero Shoe 25th
That
anniversary.
was the shoot, yeah.
And yeah, Sean Holland or Jack Tarlington, one of those two dudes have the Skateboarders Journal. One of them nominated me to be the DJ for some reason.
You'd already done some artwork for them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'd been on the cover of their magazine.
Yep.
I've got it right here actually. Look at that skate trick.
That's awesome. Look at that.
Yeah.
Those there's no bunions or anything. There's a pretty good set of shoes.
They nominated me to DJ the party. So I spent a week or so getting together a playlist of just old skate rock music.
Did you raid Dean Cadby's collection?
No. he doesn't really get that into that sort of stuff. I really like proper skate rock
Yeah.
music that skateboarders make about skating, you know. Like
Yeah, right, cool.
sort of,
Is that what you did radio show on Triple R? Is that the sort of thing that you did for that as well?
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of suicidal tendencies, that
Yeah.
kind of crap.
Did you ever do the In Excess Devil Inside?
No.
That got mentioned the other week, that one.
No. Yeah, so I got flown up to Sydney to DJ this party. Basically made a playlist on my laptop, pressed play, and then stood behind the computer looking like I knew what I was doing. I didn't have a fucking clue. But at that party, one of the songs I played was an Angry Samoan song. And Jeff Grosso came up to me and he's like, "Man, I've just got to introduce myself. I'm Jeff. I can't believe you're playing the Angry Samoans. They're one of my favourite bands." And I was like, "Jeff, pleased to meet you, sir."
That's so cool. What about with the travel? Did you ride your motorbike up to was
Yeah.
it Sydney or Canberra?
I rode to Canberra to play skate cricket.
Yes, connected to the old skate cricket, which we did mention the other week with Will Stoyles had a bit of a dig at Junior and his record.
Yeah, Junior's really, really crap at batting.
But you're not so bad at it. You actually
Well, I used
saved
to
an
play-
innings, is that right?
I never played officially, but my stepbrother used to force us to play with him when we were little.
Yeah.
So I can hit the ball everywhere if I need to.
Yeah.
I guess probably playing softball helps too. But
Yep.
I rode my motorbike up. I left at 4 a.m, thinking it would be enough time to get there. But yeah, it was so cold when I was riding, and I didn't have warm clothes on, so I was shivering, like the whole bike was rattling. So by the time I got out to Campbellfield, I stopped at a service station and I bought a couple of newspapers and just lined my jacket, put it inside my pants, around my arms, and then put all my clothes on over the top, which seemed to work. And then I rode to Canberra, and by the time I got there, it was Victoria versus Canberra. And the whole Victoria...
So that wasn't Goofy versus Natural, it was just Victoria versus Canberra, and it was a mix of Goofy Naturals.
Yeah. When I got there, I think we'd run out of batters. Everyone had gone out for like 2 or 3 runs, because the Canberra dudes can actually play cricket. A lot of them play indoor cricket and stuff.
Yeah.
And I got there I basically got off the bike and put pads on, and me and Shooter...
You almost could have done it without pads with all that newspaper protecting you.
Well, me and Shooter managed to at least bat to the end of the overs from memory. And then those dudes batted and thrashed us.
Yeah.
And then later on that night, Conce... Oh, that's right. I was going to leave my bike at the pub, my motorbike, and they were like, "Oh, you shouldn't leave it here. It might get nicked. It's a pretty bad area." But I had no idea. And I think Jim Fowley or Luke Brown had organised for me to put it inside the pub. They knew the people who owned the pub. And so I was just going to wheel it in, and then Conce goes, "Oh, can I have a spin on it? I'll put it inside for you." And I was like, "Nah, man, it's wasted." And I was like, "Nah." And he's like, "Don't be an arsehole." I can't remember. I said, "Do you know how to ride a motorbike?" And he's like, "Don't be a dickhead, of course I do." I was like, "Fine, here you go." I was like, "Just ride it in the door, no fucking around." And of course, he's just like taken off, tried to do a burnout, blah, blah. And then came back in and went to ride it into the pub. That's right, it was Luke Brown who organised for me to put it inside. because Jim Fowley didn't know about it. And as Conce went to ride it through the door of the pub, Jim freaked out and thought he was being Conce and stuck his arm out to stop him. So he's kind of whipped out, and the bike's like sort of, I guess must have monoed or something, but it hit the glass door, the door smashed.
Oh, shit.
But then it span around, and I don't know how, but somehow the accelerator got stuck on. It got jammed against a table or something. Because tables and chairs went everywhere. It was fucking
Because it's just
insane.
spinning off the back tyre.
But the back tyre was touching the ground, so there's just smoke pouring off it. The handlebars are all twisted. It was insane.
And it's in the pub at that time.
No, it was just in the doorway of the pub.
Yeah.
But we were all sitting on the tables out the front of the pub. And yeah, there's just smoke pouring off it. And we've all run over. I'm just like, I don't know. We managed to pick it up, and then luckily one of those dudes, I don't even know who it was, but seemed to know a bit about motorbikes. He managed to straighten the handlebars for me so I could ride home.
So you didn't get to leave it in the pub.
I think I did.
Who paid for the window?
Not me.
Take that, Canberra. That's
Yeah.
crazy. So that's one of the local trips. Overseas, you've done a bit of overseas trips as well. So were they specific for skateboarding kind of trips, or they just happened that you went overseas and skated at the same time you're there? And
Skateboarder
whatever?
on holiday.
Yeah.
Took a board. I've been to Vancouver. Met Mavey. Mavey was living in Vancouver after he had his accident.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to visit him. And I told him, make sure you buy a car, because he was riding motorbikes back then. He's the reason I got into motorbikes. And he got into that via the Vancouver dudes, all the skaters there sort of had old 70s motorbikes, and he got into that. And then I went over there and visited him and was just like, this is fucking cool. So that's what made me sort of get into it
Especially
as
the
well.
way he did it, where he'd just go riding and end up somewhere. If it broke down, he'd just knock on someone's door and say, have you got this? And
Or he would go to Turkey. This actually is a true story. Went to Turkey, worked on that film that those dudes were making with Rick McCrank. And then some old dude that was, I think they were shooting on his property or something, had this old motorbike, old 70s Honda thing. Maybe said, can I borrow it? I want to ride to Scotland. I'll bring it back. He rode it to Scotland.
Turkey and Scotland are nowhere near each other. I
He
wouldn't
didn't
imagine
return
getting it back. Yeah.
Old mate didn't get his bike back. Mavey bought a car. I tried to get him to get one of those long wooden station wagon things like you'd see on National
with the wooden
Lampoon's
panels.
Vacation.
Yeah.
That was my dream. But he got this sort of weird, I think it was like a Nissan hatchbacky stretched out thing. We could sort of sleep in the back. And when we drove south down to Mexico, like stopped at all spots, and we were hanging out in Portland, like skated Burnside and stuff. And I'd gone, this dude Brent, this incredible skate artist by the way, this dude Brent that we stayed with, I'd gone out with him and some other dudes. Oh, we were with Ben Hoban from Frankston as well, and this British dude Dan Cates who rides for Death Skateboards. We'd all gone out to a strip club or something, which is what people do in Portland, I found out. I passed out actually. I was asleep at the thing and they kept putting dollar notes in front of me so I didn't get kicked out. Smooth. While we were out, Mavey stayed back at the house and he'd bought wood grain contact and put it on the car.
So that you would get your dream.
Yeah, but he didn't put it down the side. He made a couple of racing stripes over the...
Out of wood grain?
Over the bonnet and down the back window as well, covered the back window. So it was a total cop magnet after that. Yeah. And then, we sort of drove south. We ended up in San Francisco, stayed at this skate house called, like, these dudes, the Nargoyles, skate crew. It was 9 dudes in a 3-bedroom house and like sleeping in bunks and shit. All skaters. They had, I think they had a mini ramp maybe. Yeah, we went to a few houses there that had tiny little backyards with mini ramps jammed into them.
Yeah, right.
But those dudes gave us some directions on how to get to the Glory Hole, which is this pretty famous full pipe from the 80s, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they gave us a rubber raft, like a blow-up raft, because you have to paddle across this little stream to get there, and a couple of old pillows and old jackets and shit, because you've got to dam up the trickle of water. And they said, buy some kitty litter. So we bought kitty litter, and you sprinkle that on the water, and it dries it out real quick, and you can just sweep it up.
Sweep it away, yeah.
So we did that. We, the four of us, Ben and this British dude, Dan Cates, he was the one who was like super keen to go there. He's like full skate nerd. So you have to trek through all this bushland to get there. Then we jumped the fence, blew up the raft, paddled all the gear over, and we're over there as well. Oh, I should mention, maybe he'd broken his leg, so he's on crutches.
How did he do that?
The day I arrived in Vancouver, he picked me up from the airport. We drove around to Rick McCrank's house, who had a mini ramp. We started skating that, and he, like, within an hour, he'd busted his foot. So, yeah, he's on crutches, and we're drying it all out, and we dammed up the trickle of water, and then we're just about to start skating. I think it was like first run, and this local sheriff dude is yelling over the fence to us, "Get out of there. You're on federal land." This is not long after 9/11 had happened.
Right.
So
So
he's
serious kind of consequences.
Oh, that's right. The reason he saw us is because Mavey needed to shit. And so there's this big rock wall next to the pipe, and he's got his crutches and he's hobbling up there so he could shit up the top of the rock pile. And the dude saw him. And then, but he couldn't get to us because of the water. So we're just like, "Nah, man, we're just going to skate real quick. We've come all the way from Australia, you know." And he's like, I'm calling the feds, or whoever the fuck he's going to call, I don't know. He's like,
So did you skate?
well, he had to go back to his car to get his radio or whatever. So we had a few runs each.
Yeah. And then
we bailed. We managed to get out of there without getting caught too. I can't remember how, but
Oh, right. So he was.
yeah,
You went the other way.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's like a full-on effort just to get to the spot.
Such a fun mission.
And then to
though.
dodge
I wish
getting
we
caught by
had
the
a
feds.
better skate. But
Yeah. That's the days when Mavey had that perm. Is that right?
yeah, before we left Vancouver, we were buying donuts somewhere, and we saw a sign that said $25 perm. And a bunch of us just quickly gave him $5 each and made him get a perm, like, because he had long hair.
Long hair, yeah.
And yeah, he got this really tight spiral perm. So yeah, I travelled to America with Mavey in a perm.
But it got to you, didn't it?
Yeah. By the time we got to Las Vegas, I got sick of looking at it. I went and got a Viva Las Vegas tattoo, and while I was doing that, he went and got his head shaved and locked the keys in the car.
So you're in Las Vegas, keys are locked in the car. You've just got a tattoo that you probably didn't really like. And
That's a terrible tattoo.
And you've got Mavey with his head shaved. Actually, did he have trouble getting it shaved?
So, yeah, he must have been waiting for his appointment or whatever while I was getting my terrible Viva Las Vegas tattoo. I went into the hairdresser just as the woman this like old lady was just about to start shaving his head, and I think she was pulling his hair and wasn't doing it right, so he just snatched the clippers out of her hand, just, "Give it here," just went, and shaved his own head, and then had to pay $6 for it. And then, yeah, we went out and couldn't get in the car. We tried to break in, we couldn't get in, so I went into the tattoo shop and I said, have you got anything we can break into the car with? And the dude who just tattooed me goes, "We've got a Mexican." And this Mexican dude came out and broke into our car.
That's unbelievable.
Like in 30
Living up
seconds.
to the stereotype, but
Yep.
yeah.
Nice
And-
guy.
And handy too.
Yeah. Oh, and then we went to Mexico for a couple of nights. There's a bunch of other wild shit that happened on the way there. And then we ended up, Mavey was on his way back to Vancouver, but he dropped me at LA. And you know that scene in Wayne's World where they're lying on the beach on the car,
Yeah.
on the bonnet of the car, and the plane's flying overhead?
Yep.
We had a couple of hours to kill before my plane, so we went and did that.
Some of the other weird things, Maybe's had a couple of songs written about him, is that right? One
Yeah.
of them from the streets.
This band from Vancouver called Streets, which stands for, it's acronym,
Yep.
stands for Skateboarding Totally Rules, Everything Else Totally Sucks. They're fucking good, man. Like,
I'll have to
really,
find that one,
really
that's good.
talented band.
But
They
then
wrote a
that
song
links to
about
your
Maybe.
tattoo as other
called
tattoos,
Freebird.
doesn't it?
Yeah, well, they wrote a song called Freebird about Maybe, and this is the chorus.
Oh, you've got it there.
Tattooed
Yeah,
on my
okay.
hand. It says "Livin', Laughin', Lovin'," which pretty much sums up Maybe's life pretty well.
Yeah, it does.
And Mindsnare wrote a song about our old house called "Hangover from Hell."
And that's obviously because of experience at the house.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the lyrics. It's like,
Did Maunda write it, or
yeah,
yeah?
I think it's Maybe's lying in his spew or something. Andy is passed out, that is nothing new. Maybe's locked in his room, covered in spew. Some shit, I can't remember. It's fucking really, really smart.
Highbrow.
Yeah.
Overseas, you went back again to San Fran and Denver and stuff. Is this right?
I went and stayed with this dude, Andreas Troelf. Excellent human. Yeah. He's... I went and stayed with him for a little while. While I was there, it just happened to coincide with this weird thing. Have you ever heard of the Silly Pink Bunnies? Probably not. It's like this big sort of joke skate crew in America.
Yeah, right.
Like hundreds of dudes from all over, and they have a convention. I don't know if it's every year or what, but they just happened to have it when I was there. But it wasn't. We were in San Francisco, and it was in Denver, and a bunch of the people in the house wanted to go. So this is like 2 or 3 girls and Andreas. They're all sort of figuring out how they could get there and how much flights would be. And I was like, why don't you just drive? How far is it? And we sort of worked it out, and if we all paid for fuel, it was going to be way cheaper.
How
So-
far is it?
Oh, fuck if I know. I can't remember.
Like longer than Melbourne to Sydney or something
I
like
think it's similar. I can't remember.
that? Yeah, okay.
But then, so we drove in this girl's pickup truck. Yeah, went there. I met Jeremy Fish there, who's one of my favourite artists. Yeah,
He was on Tommy Guerrero's interview thing the other day.
yeah. He's pretty
cool.
really well known.
Yeah, yep.
He's, done loads of stuff in skating. Yeah, they had the like there was a big skate park there, but it was more about the party at the bar afterwards. And this bar, it was before iPads were around really, so I spun out when I saw this. This bar above every urinal had a different screen, and they were all playing skate videos. Which just at the time I was just like, America's fucking mental. you know?
Yeah. You can watch skate videos while you're taking a piss. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
And then, yeah, we drove back to SF, and I caught a train to Vancouver for a couple of weeks, and I broke my arm again. Actually, I broke my arm in Hastings Bowl, which is the big, like this real big bowl they have loads of Vans events and stuff at. But Maybe's also broken his arm in that bowl.
Is that where his son also broke his arm?
No, that was a different time.
Oh, okay. Because there was a time when they both broke their arm.
Yeah, yeah.
It's hard to keep track
Me
of
and
that.
Maybe have also both broken our arm, not at the same time, but in Elwood Bowl.
You guys are amazing.
Yeah.
The other week we
We're
had
really
Junior
good at
that did
falling
it
off.
back to back to back, but you've done it enough times that you've outclassed that for sure. So, and legs and everything. You've done
I
everything.
did it not long ago. I busted a little bone in my hand not that long ago,
Yeah.
skating Brunswick.
You need to skate like this with your hands up in the air. Don't put it down ever. So
I just need to learn how to stay on the fucking thing.
that too, yeah. So there's been a lot of injuries and stuff that you've dealt with, but I think one of the biggest health issues you've dealt with has been epilepsy. That's
Yeah,
had a
that's
big
shit.
impact on your life, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How did it sort of first come about? How did it present itself, and how did you, deal with it when it first? How old were you when it first happened?
Oh, I have no idea. I have seizures when I'm asleep, so I've probably had them when no one's there and not had a clue.
Mhm.
But the first time I remember it, I used to go with this girl, Ruth, and she told me what had happened in the morning. She said, I couldn't even wake you up. I poured water on your face. Because I think I asked her why the pillow was wet. And she sort of told me what had happened. And I was just like, bullshit. And I just...
So you would wake up and not have any feeling, not have a sensation that something had happened?
It completely erases my memory when I have a seizure for a couple of hours either side of it. And I didn't even believe her at that time. She's like, you got to go to a doctor, blah, blah. And I just was like, whatever. And I just didn't.
How old were you then?
About 26, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it happened again a few years later. And eventually it happened one time she called an ambulance. So started sort of taking notice of it and went and got a few tests and pretty much ignored doctors for a decade or so.
That's the best way to deal with serious medical issues, isn't it?
Well, it always happened when I was asleep. I didn't give a shit.
Has it occurred when you're not asleep? Is it?
Yeah. That's when I started
taking it a bit more
wising
serious.
up a bit. Yeah, like it happened another time, and other girls. This is the only time I find out when it's happened if there's someone in bed with me. And she freaked out and called an ambulance. So I ended up in hospital again. But it really, like, I can't explain to you how much it destroys my memory and just leaves me really rattled.
So like
super depressed for a couple of hours as well.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah, I had the first one I had when I was out in public was at Fairhaven Skate Park.
In New South Wales?
No, down on the Great Ocean Road.
Oh, right. Okay.
Aireys Inlet Skate Park, sorry. And that's when I stopped drinking that day. I was like, this is kind of scary. I was too scared to even drive or anything for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Is there a link between alcohol and epilepsy, or is that just something that...
Well, the doctors have told me... I don't think there is because I've never had one when I've been drinking.
Yeah.
The doctors have told me that the alcohol will make the medication I take for it not work.
Mm-hmm.
So I just... And it, like they said, you could probably have one or two, but I just never see the point of that. If I have one, I just want to have
more.
heaps.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and that's one of the other
much
things.
Easier, and it's easier to explain to people that you say I don't drink rather than I only drink one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing about the epilepsy and then the side effects of what's happening there is that your social environment has had to change a bit because you can't drink as often, or you don't drink now, and whereas that used to be quite a big part of. I don't mean that.
Well, it did. I was like, man, my entire music catalogue is useless to me now. It's all drinking music. So music tastes have slightly changed. Not really. I still enjoy that music, but I don't go out and party. Mostly, I mean, I do sometimes, but I get bored by 9 o'clock. Drunk people are fucking boring.
Yeah, they talk in a different way, don't they?
Yeah. Especially my idiot friends.
Yeah, maybe it is just your friends.
Just sort of not into doing that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But we've got children now as well, which that's had a massive impact on my social life too.
Yeah. So I suppose to some degree it's not
skating,
just the epilepsy that you've had to deal with. The alcohol side is kind of easier to deal with because you've got the kids and stuff. And
I had a seizure out in Olinda once. My little daughter Imogen, she actually remembers it because I felt it coming on. Apparently, I don't have any recollection of it, but I told Bianca I didn't feel well, and we're at the front of this cafe in this country town, and she sort of sat me down and went and got some help. She said, "Oh, can you look after Imi?" And then I had a full-on seizure. I was on the ground spazzing out, and I think to distract Imi, the cafe owner gave her a bowl of ice cream.
Right.
So now she associates me having a seizure with getting ice cream.
When are you going to have a seizure,
So
Dad?
every time seizures get brought up in conversation, she's like, ice cream?
And so have you had to adjust much other things in your life to deal with it, to manage the epilepsy? So you've got some medication.
Well, apart from having no beers and no friends to hang out with, what else would there be? Still skate.
You can still skate. You can still... So you can actually sort of feel it coming on.
Yeah.
If you're not asleep.
Yeah. I often get a very similar feeling without having a seizure as well.
Oh, okay. So
I
it's
don't-
not necessarily
sometimes
that.
yeah.
And if you do feel it, you can't take medication to stop it at that time. It's just that's it sort of thing. It still it can be.
Never tried, but no,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I usually just find somewhere quiet to sit away from weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
Just get away from people and
Yeah.
have a drink of water.
Yep. So yeah, that must be pretty difficult to have to deal with that and still try to function, like a normal everyday sort of
It's
thing.
not, it doesn't have that big of an impact on me. It's pretty rare that it rears its head, but
Yeah. But does it play in your mind that it could
Yeah.
occur? Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Probably more so in Bianca's mind, my partner.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
She's-
It would be pretty horrific for her to have to
Yeah.
see it happening and
Well, Emmy was pretty rattled by it, but luckily the ice cream was there to distract her. I got another child as well, young Errol.
yep, just a new addition to the family.
He's 9 months old.
Yep.
Yeah, good dude. Happiest baby that's ever graced the planet, I swear to God.
That's good.
So rarely cries.
Yeah.
We let Emmy name him.
Oh, really? That's so
Um,
cool.
Well, we let her give him his middle name.
Which is
Toucan.
Toucan.
Yeah. Yeah, this is why I did this grip tape art.
Fantastic.
Toucan. Ooh, yeah.
And that's kind of a nice little segue there. So you've done a little bit of art on that board there representing him.
I
But
always do grip tape art on my boards.
yep. And that's the other big part of your life is art. And we've sort of gone and talked a lot about the skateboarding side of it. But art is just as big of a thing in your life, probably
Way
even
bigger.
more.
Way
even.
bigger,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's influenced your career as well as your passion.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier on about how it started back when you were at primary school and you won your highlighters then, and it's obviously progressed on from there. You did a bit of study, but you haven't really studied it. Your own bio suggests that you have
I
not
studied finished art briefly for a couple of months straight after high school. That was basically, finished art is pretty much doing by hand what is now done with Adobe Illustrator. Just creating black and white line work. It's just boring as shit. Nothing creative about it at all. And then right after I was building skate parks, I only worked on like 3 or 4 skate parks with the CSP dudes. I just remembered someone else I forgot in that crew was Seb Steele.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
I got to know him pretty well then.
Yep.
He's hilarious, really fun dude. But after I'd finished working there, we were working on a park in Neerim South, which is not that far from where I grew up. I went from that to study illustration at North Melbourne Institute of Technology, whatever that TAFE's called, in Preston. And I did that I was like mature age by then. I think I was like, I can't remember, who knows, 29 or something like that. Oh wait, no, I would have been in my 30s. Only reason I remember that is because the house I lived in before that, Mavey had a surprise party for me.
For your 30th.
Yeah, and he made this giant cake out of cardboard and hired a stripper to jump out of it. It
wasn't Libby, was it?
No.
Okay.
No, just a random that none of us knew. So I was studying illustration at this thing, and it was 31-year-old Andy and a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old kids straight out of high school.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a couple of older girls, but it was a disaster. That's when I was living with Nick and Scotty as well. So,
Did you finish it or?
Nah, I was like living on Oz Study, so I had no money at all.
Yeah.
I was trying to get drunk with these dudes every night and still do the work. But people were like starting to hit me up to do paid work. Like the first paid artwork I ever did was for Mindsnare, the band. Matt Maunderg asked me to draw a back patch for them. That's first proper commissioned artwork. There might have been a couple of little bits and pieces, but nothing official. And then, from there I started getting little requests here and there for bits and pieces, and I was finding it hard to do that and keep up with the homework, schoolwork scenario.
And obviously the homework, schoolwork stuff wasn't paying you, whereas the other little things
and
were.
I wasn't learning the stuff I needed to learn either.
Yep.
So I bailed on it.
Yep.
Got a part-time job.
Yep. And
that's sort of when I started concentrating a bit more on art stuff.
Yeah. In between that, did you study cake design before that as well?
Yeah. That was just a part-time course on the weekends and evenings.
Yeah, right. I remember when you did that.
Yeah, I did get right into.
I was like, that's such a weird thing. Like, I knew you did some art and stuff, but cake decorating was such a different thing. But you did some amazing cakes. You've done a lot for people and for friends.
Mostly did it for fun. They take me a really long time.
Yeah.
The reason I got into it, I used to do it when I was in high school just for fun. Me and Mum would sort of make cakes, mostly just because I wanted to eat cake. But this dude, Brian McNeil, was out here on a holiday. This Canadian guy, real shy skater. Him and his mate Marcel, who still lives here, they were out here, and Brian had a job when he was back in Canada as a cake decorator. He's an incredible artist too. Like, pick up a piece of paper and do the best drawing ever in 5 seconds. But he showed me this was sort of pre-internet, not really, but nobody had online folios and any of that stuff. So he had this photo album full of cakes that he'd made, and really cool stuff, like Halloween themed, loads of Halloween cakes and just over the top weird cakes.
Yep. Not just a frog in the pond kind of situation.
No.
Much better. Yeah.
Realistic. I remember this one. There was a big, realistic looking rat with a big piece of cheese in its mouth, and I was like, "Is that a cake?" You sort of see a lot more of it now on the internet, but I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
And and he'd sort of, I think he'd done some tattooing and just like real cool, super humble dude, and just got me super psyched on it. And I was like, I'm going to be a cake decorator. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to make so much money. And so I went and did this part-time course in the city, and they pretty much taught me how to make a wedding cake, which I had no interest in.
Right.
And then I did another one on making other style of cakes. And when I finished, I was like, right, now I got to get a job as a cake decorator. And I sort of looked around, and you could get a job making wedding cakes, but
otherwise it doesn't really exist as an industry.
It didn't, man. It sort of probably does a bit more now, but it's not a thing in Australia. It was in the States and in Canada, and I think it's pretty big in like Southeast Asia. Yeah, or was back then, but there wasn't a lot of cake TV shows and stuff.
Yeah,
there is
you
now.
see that now. Yeah.
But so I just started doing it on my own from home while I was living with Scotty and Nick and Casey. Man, I got a commission one time to do. I actually did a pornographic cake for Anthony Mapstone's birthday.
Okay.
It was like this section of a woman with the completely nude and some gross stuff written on her chest. And then I did basically the same thing, but of a dude. This guy, Matt Weston, asked me to make for his friend. And so all Casey and Scotty and Nick and that are out in the pool getting wasted one weekend afternoon, sunny afternoon. I'm inside hand sculpting this penis cake. I was just like, how did my life come to this?
I like how you're trying to...
Well, that's how I made it.
You mentioned the Mind Snare graphic that you first did. Is that actually what it turned into on the board?
No.
That was a different one?
No, I didn't bring that one.
Yep.
That's another one I did. I've done a bunch of stuff for those dudes.
Yep.
Matt Maunder has definitely looked after me in that regard. Like, done a bunch of artwork for Mind Snare, but when he worked for Element, through him I got hooked up on the Element skateboarding, what was it? Artist Advocate program. Mm-hmm. Sort of deal. Which is, I didn't really get it, I still don't, but it's kind of like being sponsored for being a skate art person.
Mm-hmm.
There's another dude, Trolley, who I think Matt showed him a bunch of my jokes that I'd drawn. So
Yeah, because some of
decided to
your
hook me up.
art is joke sort of stuff. So
Yeah, most
things
of it.
like Flasher in the style of Thrasher magazine and Gleaming the Boob, things like this. There's none up there, is there? But there are some
a
other
few
stuff.
here.
Oh yeah, the old Bananas in Tiranas and Albert Einstein, William Shakespeare. It's pretty cool stuff actually, and that's kind of giving you a bit of a.
Not. It's just really bad jokes too.
Yeah, it
the
is bad
drawings.
jokes.
Look,
It's
look,
like it's one way of making money on dad jokes, isn't it?
Look at this one.
Get a load of this turkey. Don't get cocky with me, mate.
That's terrible.
It is terrible, but people will chuckle at that like I just did. So it's fantastic. The variety in your artwork is quite dramatic. You've got the stuff that you're doing with Gage Road, our supporters, Gage Road Breweries. Single Fin Summer Ale is one of the current ones we've got on board. But there's a range of boards that came out linked with that brand as well.
Yeah, I did them sort of semi-recently. I was pretty excited to do that one actually. Through a design agency called Swearwords, they did all the graphic design for this and designed all the packaging and everything for Gage Roads. They hit me up to do some illustrations, just hand-drawn, this kind of stuff.
Yep.
So I think my drawings are on about 6 or 7 of their different products.
Cool.
And then I've done a few other bits and pieces for them over time. But then, yeah, they asked me to draw the skateboard graphics, and I was just like, yeah, this ties in really well. And I think they give them out to pubs. It's like promo sort of
Yeah,
thing.
okay, yep. So they're not actually, you don't buy them in a skate shop, or most often they're a promo type situation.
Yeah.
And so are the people, the agency that did the graphics and asked you to do that stuff, are they the ones that also got the smoked beer one, or just associated beer together there? That's,
No. A lot of my artwork it's an alcohol theme as well. No, Smoke Beer is Nello's company. I think there's Nello and a couple other dudes. I've done a few other graphics for them.
Yep.
One of them never got printed. Yogi Bear themed one, which I was kind of bummed about because I liked it.
Yep. One of the other boards you've got back there is an Eric Costin girl board.
Oh, right, yeah.
That sort of came about by accident, is that right?
I had no idea that would be a skateboard graphic with Costin's
right.
name on it.
That's a pretty big name to associate to a graphic. That's huge.
Well, So a couple of years ago, it was Girls' 20th anniversary, I think it would have been. And they sent out those wooden girl dolls all over to different skate shops, I think all around the world from memory. And Fast Times had 4 of them. And so they got me to paint one, Roan, Callum Preston, I think, and Steve Gourlay. And I think it was Gourlay. And then, so we decorated them, 4 of them. And then, whenever it was, I can't remember how long, like 6 months later, Tebby from Fast Times called me and said, "Oh, Andy, I want to come and visit you at your studio. What's your address?" And I was like, "Oh, no worries." And I thought he was going to come and talk to me about maybe designing a T-shirt, which is what most people ask me about.
Yep.
But he came in with a board box. I was like, "What's going on?" And he goes, "Oh, I've got something for you." I was like, "Oh, cool, free board." And he took it out and showed me, and I was just like, "That says Eric Costin's name on it." And yeah, I was like shaking, like, "Oh my God."
So they didn't call you and say, "We're going to use your artwork"?
Not a clue.
So that's free artwork that they got.
They can have it. I was so stoked. And yeah, so they had this series of the 4 boards, like me, Roan, Callum, and Gourlay. And then a couple of weeks later, there was a big party, like launch party kind of deal.
Cool. And you got a whole box of those?
No, I got one in a box.
Ripped off. You've done a bunch of other boards, Hoon and all that sort of stuff. There's one down there with Dorfus' name on it too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Old
Was that
Dorfus,
a,
R.I.P., mate.
Yeah. That was done while he was still alive?
Yeah. I've done I think I did three boards for Dorfus.
Yep.
I've done.
When it comes to something like that, do you chat to him about a theme that he would be interested in, or he just...
No, this was part of a series, which the other ones are down there, I think.
So I've got this one here, which has got...
That's Kaza.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Vindaroo
Cuzzo hit me up. He wanted.
And Bogan Josh.
This was the first board series I ever did, and I reckon it's the best one I've ever done. He sent me an email. He said, "Oh, would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yep." What kind of thing do you want? And he goes, "Well, we were camping on the weekend and we were talking about food and Aussie gourmet." He was calling it gourmet. And I was like, "Yeah, let's do a Hoon Gourmet series. That's awesome." And so I literally made this list in my phone of dumb shit, just dumb food ideas that were kind of a little bit Aussie and food related.
Yeah.
Just play on words type shit. Like,
Yeah.
what have I got there? Koala masala, Vindaloo, Bogan Josh.
The play on words thing is a thing that gets me. Like, how do you come up with so many? Like, are you dyslexic, or is it and it just happens to be funny in the end, or is it?
I don't know. I think it's genetic. My grandpa was like permanently doing this. Like, you couldn't have a straight conversation with him. Like,
So it's just
it was kind of frustrating, to
engendered
be
into you
honest.
since a young age. Yeah.
Yeah, he just, like, every single thing you'd say, he'd make a joke out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Because some of them are absolute genius, and I'm like, oh, wonder why no one's
Jeez,
thought
you've
of that
got a
before.
very loose definition of the word genius.
That's true. That's true. I'm a pretty simple fellow in that regard. This board here is one of your favourites, is that right?
Oh yeah, the graphics on this have faded heaps.
Yep.
But yeah, I got
So
a bit
for
of
those
it.
who are familiar
Oh,
with the
I put
VB
a lot
brand,
of
this
work
is
into
more
it.
normally a red colour, but yeah, it's got boobs on it. That's cool.
That other Hoon board over there was a bro model for
This one?
No,
The Mumford.
yeah, that was for Matt Mumford, and I dug out the original drawing of that a year or two back and gave it to Nitty, and Nitty gave it to him for his 40th birthday. The black and white line work. That's how I usually work, is like a black and white ink drawing, like pen and ink.
Yep.
It's all still fairly analog. I don't do any of the actual drawing on the computer, and then I add all the colours in on the computer.
Yep.
Usually.
And you've done other music-related graphics and things as well.
Yeah.
You've got a magazine cover.
Yeah. I was so stoked to get to do that one.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, Trent hit me up. I remember at the time I was really, really busy. I had loads of work, and I'd said to Bianca the night before, I said, I think I'm sort of at the point where I can't take on any more projects between now and the end of the year. I think it was the end of the year. And she said, oh, well, that's good. And then I got the email from Trent the next day. He's like, would you be interested in doing a cover of Slam? And I was just like, yes, cancel everything. It's like,
That's cool.
Dream come true.
That's
And he sort of explained what he wanted. He said he wanted someone doing a trick. That's the Hollywood High 16 set. He said he wanted someone doing a trick down that. And it's like it says Aussies in the USA. And so he had this list of dudes he wanted hanging out in the picture.
So that wasn't a photo that you've redrawn. That was actually your own interpretation of putting these dudes into this image.
Yeah. I had there was so much work. I'd worked on it for a month.
Yeah. Because it's quite different to some of the others that are a bit more, fun and less needing to be less precise, I suppose.
Oh, I mean, if it was left up to me, I would have probably done something completely different.
Yeah.
I don't really enjoy trying to draw specific people. I'm happy to draw a face, but if it's got to look like a particular person, it makes it way harder.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't even think I'm that good at it, but and like some of the dudes,
What is he doing?
he's watching.
What's his hand doing in that area? And the face that he's putting?
That.
Right, it just looks like he's pleasuring himself, and he's...
All my drawings have a hidden wank in there somewhere. It's like Jeff Hook.
Oh, Hook. Gage Road we've talked about there, and other artwork stuff. You've got some Lee Ralph trucks.
Lee Ralph truck for Thieves recently. That was another one. They just said, would you be interested in doing a Lee Ralph truck graphic? And I was just like, yep. And I've done one wheel graphic. This is for Jake Duncombe.
Cool.
At the time, I don't know if he's still got this dog, but he used to have a dog called Mick Snagger, a sausage dog. So I drew him winding around the wheel, sniffing his own fart. Really highbrow stuff.
That is good. And you did the Screaming Hand 40th anniversary. You bring to us
Yep.
Pamela Henderson.
Yep.
Fantastic. Where is that now?
I don't know, someone bought it.
Oh, right. So that was just out there for sale and someone bought it. You don't...
The show started in Sydney, and that was where the first exhibition was. I
Yep.
didn't go to that. And someone in Sydney bought it.
So Santa Cruz didn't keep those sort of things. I thought they might have.
Nah, there was a lot, and there's some big name artwork from
Yeah.
like some of the American dudes.
Yep.
Around that time, Jimbo Phillips was out here.
Yep.
I remember.
That's Jim Phillips' son.
Yeah.
Who's an artist in his own right.
He does really similar art to Jim Phillips.
Yeah.
My friend French, who's like this British skate artist, quite well known as well,
Mm-hmm.
very talented. He was living in Melbourne at the time, and he'd done a bunch of work for Indy and Santa Cruz and stuff. So he teamed up, he hooked up with Jimbo Phillips and Eric Dressen, and they were going to skate Brunswick Bowl right near my house. And he sent me a text. He's like, "I'm going to skate Brunswick. You want to come?" And I was like, kind of busy. He goes, "Bummer, I'm going there with Eric Dressen and Jimbo Phillips." And I was just like, "Okay, I'll see you there."
So you got commissioned through, was it connected through Lush that you got that connection, or was that through some?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I wasn't working for them anymore by
No.
then, but so yeah. Well, the reason I stopped working there was because when this Gage Roads job came up, I'd taken 5 or 6 weeks off to do the work, but I was also starting to get a lot more other work, just sort of illustration, T-shirt, poster graphics and stuff like that.
So wasn't that you were working for those guys at the time doing their graphic design?
No.
Oh,
I was
right.
just freelance.
So
they just
you were working at, when did you have that 5-week break? You had a break from which job?
from Lush.
Right, and then
So Scott Larrett from Swearwords asked me to come in and meet with him, and I showed him some of my artwork, I guess. I'm not even sure how he knew I did artwork. I think he's a friend with Steve Gourlay and Anushka Thompson. And so he'd asked me to come in and just do a quote on doing the illustrations, which I did. And I just thought, there's no way I'm going to get this job, but it's a fun exercise. And then he hit me up a couple of weeks later and said, yeah, we're going to go ahead with the first one. Well, there was originally 5 labels that they wanted all done at the same time. So I took 5 or 6 weeks off. Mike Carney, who's running the warehouse at Lush there, he's like super cool with that kind of stuff. He really looked after me. And then we'd already had our first baby, Imi. And so I just worked on that. And then it got to the end of the 5 weeks, and I still had heaps of other work coming in, and it was working out better, just sort of being around the baby and helping out more with that stuff. I think Bianca was still on maternity leave. And I called up Mike at Lush and I was like, I'm still real busy, man. Like, I think I'm just not going to come back. And he's like, good. I was like, what? And he goes, oh, no, that's good for you. Like, well done. That's what we wanted.
Yeah.
And because at first I thought he was like, good, fuck off. But he said to me, he's like, oh, if it ever doesn't work out for you, you've always got a job here. And I was just like, that's the best possible safety net.
Yeah.
So.
And you haven't had to go back?
Nah.
Cool.
Well, recently, like after we had Errol, I have been working for what do you call it? Sculptor, making limestone sculptors.
Yep.
Company called Denholm. Very hilarious dude called Steve.
But the beauty of that is it's more art related than packing boxes is. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's not in the skate industry, but
yeah.
I really like it. Very rewarding. The reason I got into that is I'd sort of been friends with him and seen his stuff, and I've made trophies for the Vans Park series a bunch of times. And the last time they had it here, it was in Manly actually, I decided to make the trophies out of big blocks of limestone, which I won't do again because it was way too heavy. But so I carved big chunk of stone with it looked like it had a truck coming out of it, and it had a wheel made of stone that span on the.
Oh, it actually operated.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was ridiculously heavy
Yeah.
for a trophy, so I won't do that again. But Steve was really stoked on Steve who showed me how to use the limestone. He was stoked and kept asking me, come and work for me, and I was just like, nah, I work for myself, what are you talking about? And after our son Errol was born, I just decided to, I thought it'd be better to have a bit more regular income.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted, ideal world, I'd like to just sort of do art for myself, but I never, ever get to do that.
Yeah.
I have recently sort of made some of these kind of stubby holders and coffee mugs. I just made some T-shirts, which I've been selling on my website. So
Plug it.
that's
What's your website?
salvadornali.com.
salvadornali.com. Skatable tram, was that art?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mavie did the majority of the building. We kind of worked on the design together. That was for the Cons project.
They did like a pop-up skate park in this,
Well, it was a building in the city that was
Yeah.
getting demolished, and Converse, I don't really know the logistics behind it, but they had arranged to have the bottom level, which was all empty concrete car park kind of thing. So they had this temporary skate park set up in there, a lot of it was built out of concrete.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that just got demolished when they demolished the building. But via Kerry Fisher asked me to make a skatable sculpture for it. And so me and Mavie, they wanted it to be like an iconic Melbourne thing, and we tossed around a couple of ideas. And we came up with a tram that looked like it was bursting through the floor.
Yep.
On a bit of an angle, so you could wall ride the roof. And then the front barriers you could do grinds on. And I think the windowsill you could sort of do a weird manual on if you could get up there. And Flaz, Tom Flaherty, and I think Nello and a couple other dudes did some workshops on making DIY concrete skate stuff. So they built some kickers to go up to it. And yeah, dudes did stuff on it.
Cool. That
I
would have
never
been
got
fun.
to skate it.
Oh, you didn't even get to skate it?
Nah. The day me and Mavie went there, because it was open pretty much every day, but the day me and Mavie went there, it just happened to not be open.
Yeah. I went there, but I went there too early in the morning. I think it was like 11 o'clock and it was opening at 12 or 1 or something like that. So I didn't get to skate it.
It's an incredible, the tram itself turned out so well. Mavie just went above and beyond. I've got some progress photos of it. I was flicking through them a couple of days ago and I'd forgotten how much work went into it, because the corners of a tram are round.
This is the old style trams, the green rattler type
and,
trams.
so it's all made of plywood. It looks sort of real, I guess.
Yeah. No, it looked great.
I painted it all to, the green and yellow and whatnot, but Mavie did the hard work. And
the shaping of it and
for
stuff.
the corners, because it was all plywood, he made the corners out of concrete, because we couldn't think of any other material that we could shape that would also be durable enough to skate on. So he just built these boxes and shaped concrete around it. It was so incredible.
It didn't have to get moved, so it didn't matter how heavy it was.
Yeah, we had to deliver it.
Oh, right. So it wasn't built in that space.
Nah.
Yeah, fuck, that would have been hard.
Mavie made it so it all locked in together as well. He's so good at that stuff.
Yep. Are there any other bits and pieces? I've sort of gone through most of the items that I'd had a look at before the interview, but you probably want to say thanks to Scotty, Scott and Pop.
Oh, definitely.
Pop and Scott Studios.
My studio's in the Pop and Scott workshop, Scotty G. Yeah, they've definitely looked after me.
Yep.
Very good friends of theirs.
Yep.
We both had our daughters within a month of each other. It's funny, loads of our friends all had kids around the same time.
Yeah. How did that occur?
We weren't all at the same party, if that's what you're insinuating.
The other thing about that whole Scotty getting mentioned again is it's probably about the third or fourth interview that we've had his name mentioned again. So I think he's going to have to be up on the cards to be sitting in that seat pretty soon.
He sounded pretty keen. I mentioned it to him.
Yeah, all right. I'll get in touch with him.
What the main thing you need to do with that is, if he starts rapping, you're gonna have to just turn all the cameras
Shut
off
it
because he
down.
never stops.
Anyone else you would like to thank? Anyone else you want to
shit.
sort of? There's probably people you wish you could have mentioned, but
I can't
may
remember.
not have.
Yeah, everyone.
Everyone. Andy loves you.
Thanks, world.
It's been a fantastic chat. I've really enjoyed it, and it's a little intimate environment we're in. Great to be surrounded by your artwork as well. It's so much about you, all of this stuff.
Sorry I went on for too long, but
No, I love it. It's great. And I'm sure that people listening and watching at home would have loved it too. Once again, thanks to Single Fin, to Gage Road Breweries, Single Fin
I would
in
also like
particular.
to thank Single Fin and Gage Roads Breweries.
Yeah, they've helped you a lot. They've paid some
They're
bills.
just involved
so,
in my life quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um,
And
this Single Fin used to be called a different name, and it had a completely different illustrations. I redrew those ones a few different times.
oh, right.
Um,
So not just a different beer, it was
It was
just
the same beer,
but just a
just
different name.
different.
Yeah.
It was called South Beach originally, but I think they changed
Sounds
it.
too Sydney.
And then the original drawing I did for it had a girl with her bikini getting blown off, and they said it was too racy.
It would have sold beers
it
for
was
me.
that girl actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That? Not
Yeah.
even showing the boobs? And that's too racy?
Yeah, they said it was too
Oh,
saucy.
wow. Oh, well. They're
Yeah,
selling beer to kids.
I was glad I finally got to reuse that character because she's cool.
And I mean, you've had so many interactions in the industry from the magazine people, from
Definitely
boards
need
and-
to thank the Skateboarders Journal dudes.
Yep.
Sort of one of the first things that kicked off things for me was I got interviewed for issue number 2 of the journal.
There's not many people that are on the cover of skateboard magazines, so that's not a bad effort. What was this one came out here as well? What's
That's the 30th anniversary, so the 30th issue one, and they wanted everyone who'd been on the cover to be put into the image.
Mhm.
And so all these dudes are really, really good skateboarders, and me pretending to vomit off the edge.
So is that was that just a photo that they've put all those in, or is that an artwork that you did?
No, Jack, the art guy from the journal, made that sculpture of his local pub.
Yep.
The Shaky, and Moe took the photo of me. I'm pretty sure he took most of the photos of the other dudes.
Were you actually spewing, or is it just a?
No, I was standing on the edge of Northcote Bowl pretending to vomit. Yeah, they just wanted pictures of people at the pub, basically. And
So even though your cover was just your feet, they still included you on.
I told them I don't deserve to be on there. Don't put me on there.
That's so cool. You're too honest, Andy. You really are.
So the story behind my interview in this is Sean Holland, who sort of organised it all, was working. I can't even remember if it was Slam or ASM. I think it was ASM, and I was supposed to be. No, it must have been Slam. I can't remember. I was supposed to be interviewed for that, and I got bumped. Like it fell through, and I think there was an article instead about. There was one about Roan, and then the next issue, which I thought it was going to be in, I think there was an article about Tony Hallam's board collection.
So you just kept getting bumped and bumped.
And I was just like, this sucks. And I didn't know.
So
Sean
the interview
very
was
well.
already done.
I can't remember. No, not this one.
No.
I think he had the images, and I can't remember what happened. But I didn't know Sean very well at the time. And later on, like he had plans to start this magazine, the Skateboarders Journal. And he said he liked the stuff that I'd sent him, so he wanted to save it for that. So
Yeah, right. So then it was good that you got bumped.
I was super stoked.
Yeah.
And then he's like, we need a skate photo of you. And I was just like, nobody wants to see a picture of me on a skateboard. And I'd recently learned Madonnas.
Yeah. And when you learned them, how were you dressed?
It wasn't when I learned them. I was dressed normally.
Oh, I thought you were dressed as Madonna.
No, I was at Warrigal actually, Warrigal Skate Park, and I learned them on the vert wall there. And to this day, I've never done them better than that. It was like proper, really good Madonnas. And I think it's because I'd had like 4 or 5 beers at the time. And then Tim Hillier was there, I think, and someone had a leather jacket. And he's like, oh, I'll get a photo of you, put the jacket on. or maybe I said I'll put the jacket on, just being a dickhead. And I went to do one and just had the most horrible slam straight onto my shoulder. But that was the day I figured out my window. I've got this window of beers, or I can have 3.5, and if I have up to 3.5 and I start skating really good, and then after the 5th one, I'm fucked.
Yeah, right. So you got a period there where you can just...
So, yeah.
You get over that, you get enough confidence, and then you get too drunk.
Yeah. And then so the day I shot the photo doing a Madonna, dressed as Madonna, it was when I was still studying illustration. They came and pulled me out of class at like 9 in the morning, drove me to Point Cook. It was a freezing cold day. And I'm just like, I need to have my 3.5 beers. Otherwise I'm not going to be able to do it. So I'm like sculling long necks on the way there. And then, yeah, just had terrible skate. And no one, it was just me, Sean and Steve Gourlay, who can probably do a Madonna with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
Like, he's an incredible skateboarder. Yeah, and they're just getting really impatient with me trying to land one. This is before I'd even put the outfit on. And I hadn't even landed one. I was just like, fuck it, I'll just get dressed up and hopefully nerves will get the better of me and I'll land it. And I did a couple of real shit ones, and that was one of the ones they published.
Sometimes there are things you're not proud of that they put in the magazine.
Gourlay's very strict about...
You had to be a land.
Yeah, you don't print bales.
Yeah.
I was like, but look at the bale, it looks amazing.
We talked earlier about some of your broken bones. How many has there been?
Oh, I don't know.
It's more than 5, isn't it?
I've broken... Well, this one was really bad. Like, I dislocated my elbow.
Yeah.
And they set my arm. I was in one of those things hanging off the thing. So I was asleep like that. And I woke up in the morning and the plaster was all red. And so I hadn't set my wrist properly. So during the night while I was asleep or moving around, my bone had broken through the skin. Yeah, I know. And so when I woke up, I just freaked out and started screaming for the nurse. This is in 1989. So I was like 14, I think, or 15.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had to stay in hospital for another week where they sorted that out. And
This
so
one you
I think
broke.
I've broken that one. 1, 2, 3 in my wrist, 1 in my hand.
Legs?
Oh, no breaks. I've
No.
been on crutches a bunch of times. But,
And old man's back at the moment?
yeah, that's just lifting heavy rocks at the
Limestone
sculpture place.
factory.
Yeah.
I think we've pretty much covered all the
Yeah.
topics, but it's been fantastic. I've enjoyed the chat, and there's some funny stuff in your life that I think you underrate your value in terms of the artwork that you do and
That's
how
my specialty.
underrating yourself. Yeah. There was a line in the information you sent to me saying something like, let me just read it because it is quite a funny way that you summarise yourself. Now I can't find it. But it had to do with, no, I'm not going to be able to find it quick enough. It was a really good way that you could summarise yourself for
Probably in that bio at the start.
No, it was more about your, let's not even go there because I've forgotten it totally now.
Cool.
But in summary, it's been a great little chat, really entertaining because a lot of the stuff you've done is entertaining, both in terms of your graphics, but the stories as well and the life you've lived. We'll definitely get people to purchase things like Single Fin beer because they continue to support people like you. But people can also buy T-shirts, the stubby holders, all these other things that your graphics are designed for, and support Skateboarders Journal, etc. Here's a couple of T-shirts. Here we got Bananas in Tiranas. Yep. Which is a classic if you've got kids who are into the bananas in pyjamas.
Yeah, not really though. It's a banana flashing her tits. It's not really appropriate for children.
You reckon that kids would notice that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a really creepy thing happen to me the other day.
What was that?
A 4-year-old girl that my little daughter plays with down the road. Yeah, she sort of plays at their house quite a lot. And they were at our house. And I said, like, she's got an older brother and sister as well that always come over. And I said, okay, kids, you guys all go back to your house, take Imi with you. I'm going to have a shower. You can come back in 20 minutes. And the 4-year-old looked at me and goes, I already know what you look like naked because I've seen it in my brain. I was like, whoa,
that is possessed.
You weirdo. Go
Yeah.
home.
That is weird.
Yeah. And I
On
said,
that
please
note-
don't say that to your parents.
Yeah, on that note, you can all at home just picture in your mind what Andy looks like naked. There's the starting point. There's his feet. Work your way up. Mate, thanks so much.
Thanks
It's
for
been
having
a
me.
pleasure. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes as well. And we look forward to seeing you back next week with some more fantastic interviews. Cheers.